Chapter 301. This is bad, everyone be on high alert, Yuan Ko is here. Yuan Ko is here. Everyone stay alert, Yuan Shun is coming. Just as Gohan was thinking about how to get I Ching to go out of the city to search for the white sword with him, suddenly, a few figures were running in the foothold in a panic, constantly announcing the same thing. Uncle, what happened? I Ching took the lead and rushed out, grabbing the man who was running, and asked loudly. Yuan Ko. Yuan Ko is here. The man said while panting, When I went out to investigate the surroundings just now, I saw a steel monster chasing after two humans. The two humans tried to resist with their guns at first, but their bullets directly passed through the steel monster's body. That's Yuan Ko, only Yuan Ko can't be hit by bullet. After saying these words, the man hurriedly ran to the building where the chieftain was. He was probably going to report to the chieftain. Master Gohan, can you save our tribe? Without a sword bearer, I'm afraid many people in our tribe will die. The young heaven-covering Jiendi I Ching looked at Gohan with a pleading look, implying that he could save the Zongzi tribe. In his eyes, Gohan was all his hope and longing. To be able to make one of the strongest Jiendi in history look at him like this, Gohan was a little excited. Of course, as a sword-bearer, saving ordinary humans is our mission. Even if I'm not your friend, I'll still fight for the Zongzi tribe. Now, let's not talk nonsense, bring me to the gate, I want to see what kind of steel monster Yuan Ko is. Gohan said resolutely. Yes. The young heaven-covering Jiendi immediately ran to the front to lead the way for Gohan, and soon, he brought Gohan to the sand wall where they first entered the foothold. At this time, almost all the men were on high alert, or rather, panicking as they looked at the desert in the distance. They didn't gather here to defend against Yuan Ko's attack, but to see if Yuan Ko would discover their foothold. Once this Yuan Ko appeared in their field of vision, everyone would immediately flee in all directions. This was the best way to deal with Yuan Zhen that the survivors in the desert had comprehended, that was to use the fastest speed to run for their lives, hide themselves, and do their best to evade Yuan Zhen's pursuit. Then, when Yuan Zhen couldn't stand the desert's climate and left by himself. This was the survival philosophy of the desert survivors. At this time, everyone was nervously looking into the distance. At this time, there was no sign of the steel monster in sight. After waiting for a few minutes, the chief Yun also rushed over. The first thing he did when he arrived was not to ask about the situation of the battlefield, but to kneel in front of Gohan. He begged Gohan to save his tribe with tears streaming down his face. In this regard, Gohan naturally replied to Yun with the same words that he had used to answer I Ching, which made Yun feel relieved. With a sword-bearer blocking Yuan Yen, even if the sword-bearer can't beat Yuan Yen, it can still give my tribe more time and hope to escape. Yun pondered with a perverted thought. But after a long time, there was still no sign of Yuan Ko. Everyone seemed to heave a sigh of relief. They felt that Yuan Shun would probably not come here, and they were temporarily safe. But soon, something happened. A woman with a shriveled face came to report a terrible news. She found traces of the steel monster behind the foothold. Because there was a steep slope behind the foothold, it limited their vision. The people in the foothold could not find Yuan Ko at the bottom of the slope. When they first saw Yuan Ko, it was already too late. Yuan Ko had already finished climbing up the slope and was running towards the foothold that was less than 500 meters away. Follow me. Without waiting for Yun to say anything, Gohan grabbed the hands of the youth, Jiendi and I Ching, and went straight to the back of the foothold. Gohan quickly pulled I Ching and disappeared from everyone's sight. Tribal chief, let's escape. I think that the sword wielder is too thin and weak. There's no way he's a match for that steel monster. Chief, it's more important for us to escape. With the sword wielder dragging us, we can escape. The man who had previously met Yuan Zhen tried to persuade Yun. Nonsense. All our food is here. If we escape now without food, we will still die. Yun sternly reprimanded him. Listen to my commands. I will go to the back to observe the situation. All of you go and pack up our food. If the situation doesn't look good, listen to my command to escape. Understood? Yes. Everyone responded in unison. Escaping was the right thing to do. With Guhan running at full speed, he arrived at the back of the foothold in no time. Looking over, there was indeed something made of steel rapidly advancing towards the foothold. But it was not a steel monster, but a tank from before the apocalypse. Guhan took out his personal terminal and pointed it at the distant Yuan Ko. Yuan Ko's information appeared. Yuan Ko's name. Japanese Type 89 Medium Tank, Modified? Level: Tiger Current 2D World. Real World Appearance Instance Dungeon. Most Instance Dungeons Health Points, 1 5-star. Attack, 2-star Agility, 0. 5-star Fey Power. None abilities, 157mm short-barreled tank cannon, 2-6. 5mm machine guns. Ultimate skill, triple shot introduction. The world's first tank appeared after the Battle of the Somme. The Japanese army was keenly aware of the great value of tanks and immediately imported the British Mk4 tank. After careful research on this type of tank, Japan released the indigenous Type 89 tank. The Type 89 tank was fast, agile, light and convenient, and good at passing through trenches. But its armor was a fatal flaw. On the battlefield against the Japanese, there was no need to mention anti-tank cannons. Even a cluster grenade could directly penetrate the Type 89 tank's armor as long as it was placed in the right position. Hence, the Type 89 tank was also known as the Little Bean by the Chinese. It meant that this tank had a thin skin like a bean, and was the easiest tank for infantry to deal with. In a direct battle with tanks, it would not be of much use. It is worth noting that tanks and other weapons will not become Yuan Ko. Either there is a Yuan Ko controlling the tank, or it is a tank girl. Please distinguish the type of Yuan Ko. So it was just a tiger-level Yuan Ko. Guhan looked at the information and completely disregarded this Yuan Ko. It was just a tiger-level Yuan Ko. When Guhan was still an ancient sword tier player, he had not taken this Yuan Ko seriously. Now that Guhan was a treasured sword tier Yuan Ko, it was normal. This was to be expected. After all, this was an ancient sword tier dungeon. If the first player to appear was already above tiger tier, then the average ancient sword tier player would have no chance at all. They would just have to surrender and quit the dungeon. Lord Guhan, can you deal with him? If not, please leave this place immediately. The Zongzi tribe is not worth a lord swordsman sacrificing his life. I Ching, who had been dragged over by Guhan, blushed. This Yuan Ko, whose entire body was made of metal, was especially terrifying in his eyes. He felt that Lord Guhan might not be a match for this Yuan Ko. In fact, this kind of metal guy was the easiest to deal with in Yuan Ko, because he had all the information on him. On the other hand, the lone human Yuan Ko was the most difficult to deal with. You would never know what skills or tricks he would use against you. But obviously, I Ching did not think so. This was especially so when the cannon of this little tank flashed brightly. The cannon shell exploded beside I Ching, directly collapsing the already dilapidated building nearby. Dust flew into the air. I Ching suddenly felt that this Yuan Ko was too powerful, too arrogant. I Ching did not expect that in the future, this little tank would be like a loosely sealed can. With a casual wave of sword chi, he would be able to destroy hundreds or even thousands of such tanks. It's fine. I've come all the way from Yanjing, and there are many more powerful Yuan Ko than this. Guhan patted I Ching's shoulder, then turned to I Tian, who was beside him, and said, I Tian, kill it. I refuse. I Tian looked at Guhan, then looked at I Ching. Guhan immediately understood I Tian's meaning. She probably did not want to show off in front of I Ching. It seemed that she and Zetian Jiendi had a lot of things that outsiders did not know about. Otherwise, she would not be so afraid of a mere Zetian NPC. Then let King Yu do it. Guhan didn't want to force I Tian. Right now, Guhan hadn't tamed Etion yet. If he rashly forced Etion to do something he didn't want to do, it would probably leave an indelible knot in Etion's heart. Thus, under I Ching's dumbfounded gaze, Guhan swiped the center of Heavenly Sword's chest, and Etion transformed into a treasured sword. Then, Guhan sheathed it back into the scabbard on his back. As for Guhan, he pulled out another bronze sword. After a flash of light, a girl with a completely different appearance from Etion appeared beside Guhan. Despicable person, didn't you say that you would let Etion experience the entire dungeon once? Why did you pull me out? I was planning to sleep in the scabbard for a while. King Yu stretched his waist, and his full chest shook perfectly. After he finished shaking, he realized that there was I Ching beside Guhan, and he shyly wrapped his arms around his chest. Etion is throwing a tantrum, so there's no helping it. I'll have to trouble you to kill that tank for me. Guhan pointed at the Type 89 tank. Okay. King Yu was now very obedient. He did not waste any time and directly rushed towards the unlucky tank. Being targeted by a famed sword-grade swordmistress, this tiger-grade tank was really a tragedy. Chapter 302. Zhetian Jiandi I Ching watched as the slender King Yu slowly walked towards the terrifying steel beast that could shoot out lightning. He felt worried. He felt that the tattered bronze sword in King Yu's hand wasn't a match for this steel monster. Watch calmly. If King Yu can't deal with a mere tiger-level Yuan Ko, then she wouldn't be King Yu. Guhan's tone was very relaxed. It was as if it was a piece of cake for King Yu to deal with the seemingly powerful Yuan Ko. This made I Ching relax quite a bit. But very quickly, I Ching realized that his worries were completely unnecessary. The entire battle was as relaxing as an entertainment activity. King Yu didn't walk quickly towards the tank. His posture was also very leisurely. He was like a beauty that came to a shopping street to buy goods. When he walked, he even had a graceful catwalk. He didn't put Yuan Ko in his eyes at all. King Yu's speed was so slow, which naturally gave the tank a lot of time to reload. A cannonball flew out of the tank's barrel and aimed at the advancing King Yu. However, this cannonball's accuracy was very bad. It exploded near King Yu, causing dust to fill the sky. If the first shot didn't hit, another shot would come. The quality of the crew in the tank was quite good. A mere tank was able to fire a shot every 5 seconds. Moreover, the accuracy of the shots was constantly improving. When the fourth shot was fired, the shot finally hit the walking King of Yu. Normally speaking, in a battle between tanks, completing the shooting calibration within 4 shots was a very amazing thing. Moreover, this tank's target wasn't a tank of the same size as him, but a human that was much smaller than a tank. If this accuracy was placed in World War II, he would definitely be an ace gunner. Not good. Her Excellency King Yu has been shot. We have to save her. He didn't expect I Ching to be quite brave and loyal. When he saw King Yu get shot, he wanted to rush over to save her. He completely disregarded the possibility of dying to Yuan Ko's cannon. It seemed like it wasn't purely luck that he could become Jiandi in the future. No need, continue watching. Guhan pressed down on I Ching's shoulder. When the smoke dissipated, King Yu's figure appeared once again. Moreover, he seemed to be completely unscathed. There wasn't even a trace of being burnt. System notification. Your sword Maiden King Yu has been attacked by an artillery shell. Personal shield energy, minus 128. A loss of 128 points of shield energy. On an ancient sword rank sword lady, that was about half the damage, but on King Yu, it was only 3%. Seeing that his cannonballs didn't seem to deal any damage to King Yu, the little bean tank became a bit anxious. Cannonballs continuously shot out from the cannon. They were extremely accurate, and around half of them hit the area around King Yu. But it was useless. They couldn't even break through King Yu's personal shield. If a normal, rational person was controlling this tank, they would choose to reverse and retreat, or simply turn around and run. However, Yuan Ko below the nether grade would basically lose most of his rationality after passing through the dimensional rift and become a beast that only knew how to attack. Therefore, this little bean tank chose to continue firing at King Yu and bombarding him. This determined their fate of death. When King Yu took another cannonball and his personal shield fell to about 80%, the battle was about to end. This was because King Yu had already walked to the side of the little bean tank. King Yu tapped his toes and jumped more than 5 meters high. He stood on the top of the little bean tank and raised his Gojian sword. He swung at the cannon barrel, and the short cannon barrel was easily cut off like a carrot. Realizing that its cannon barrel was gone, the little bean tank finally started to panic. Its diesel engine started to roar, and it trembled as it planned to escape. But how could King Yu let them escape? King Yu jumped down from the little bean tank and slashed at the belt, crippling the little bean tank's mobility. Then, like a butcher dismembering an ox, he slashed at the tank's armor and cut off all the steel plates. In fact, King Yu could have been more direct and cut the tank into two. However, King Yu seemed to be in a bad mood and deliberately played with the little bean tank. As a result, the tank's armor was tragically cut off, and the entire driver's compartment was exposed. "Let's go up and take a look." Gohan grabbed I Ching's neck. Gohan was already very familiar with this action. He had practiced this skill when he had grabbed Ching Pin. Although I Ching's body was much larger than Ching Pin's, judging from the weight, he seemed to be lighter than Ching Pin. This was not strange. The poor I Ching was served with good food and drinks, and he ate meat every day. Naturally, he was a lot more hungry than I Ching, who was always hungry and even hungrier than I Ching. I Ching, who was grabbed by the neck by Gohan, felt like he was flying in the sky. In the blink of an eye, he arrived next to the little bean tank. At this moment, King Yu had just grabbed 4 humanoid Yuan Ko out of the tank. How come there are 4 women? When I Ching saw the humanoid Yuan Ko that King Yu had pulled out, he was shocked to discover that they were actually 4 girls. They didn't look like adult girls. The 4 female Yuan Ko were wearing tight sportswear. Gohan had seen some information before the apocalypse and knew that these sportswear were the sportswear worn by female students in school. In other words, in their world, these girls should be school students, and female high school students at that. At this moment, the 4 female high school students seemed to have fainted during the battle. They were lying straight on the ground, allowing their bodies to be exposed in front of Gohan and I Ching. The inside of the chariot was extremely hot. Therefore, the sportswear of these female high school students were soaked in sweat and stuck tightly to their bodies, exposing their soft and youthful curves. Perhaps youthful wasn't the right word to describe these 4 female high school students. 2 of the girls had voluptuous breasts and looked no different from mature women. Originally, it was the time for female high school students to grow their bodies properly. Moreover, the development of female high school students in the sports club was even better. "Gohan, how do we deal with these 4 Yuan Ko?" King Yu's eyes showed a bit of pity. It seemed like these 4 immature female high school students Yuan Ko had aroused King Yu's compassion. King Yu really couldn't kill 4 defenseless female high school students. "I Ching, what do you think?" Gohan didn't answer directly and asked I Ching instead. I Ching hesitated. He stared blankly at the 4 female high school students with a conflicted expression. This couldn't be blamed. I Ching was a young and hot-blooded lad after all. It wasn't strange for his imagination to run wild after seeing 4 female high school students. Jiandi was also human. Plus, I Ching wasn't the decisive Jiandi. "Lord Gohan, they're all Yuan Ko, right?" I Ching thought for a moment and asked Gohan. "Yes, that's right. They're all Yuan Ko." At that moment, the 4 girls had already woken up and were struggling to get up. Their eyes and pupils weren't the black of a normal person, but a blood-red color. This proved that they had already lost their rationality during the process of crossing the dimensional rift and no longer possessed the spirit and willpower of a normal human. Actually, it's very easy to determine if they are Yuan Ko. You just have to touch their bodies. Guhan saw that I Ching was still hesitating and added, Yuan Ko's body is hidden in the dimensional rift, and only humans with sword essence can touch it. Otherwise, ordinary humans won't be able to touch their bodies. This is also why human weapons are ineffective against Yuan Ko. Touch these four and you'll know if they are Yuan Ko. All right. I Ching nodded and extended his hand, intending to touch the four female high school students' Yuan Ko bodies. When they saw someone extending their hand, the four young girls were very resistant. They bared their teeth and roared at I Ching like wild beasts, as though they wanted to swallow I Ching alive. It looked very terrifying. Even though I Ching was a little afraid, he still touched the arms of the four Yuan Kos without any hesitation. I Ching was stunned for a moment before touching their heads and pinching their full breasts. Lord Guhan, these four girls aren't Yuan Ko. I Ching can touch them. How can this be? Guhan seemed to be thinking on the surface, but he already knew why I Ching could touch the four Yuan Ko bodies. It was a crucial step in Guhan's plan. At this time, Guhan actually had another thought in his mind. I didn't expect Zetian Jiendi to be so lustful at such a young age. He even groped Yuan Ko's breast. Could it be? Guhan paused his gossip about Zetian Jiendi and pretended to be enlightened. I understand now. That must be it. I Ching, congratulations. You can become a sword bearer. I can become a sword bearer. I Ching was stunned. He lowered his head and thought for a few seconds. I know. I Ching's eyes were bright and excited. Lord Guhan said before that only humans with sword essence can touch Yuan Ko's body. So I also have sword essence in my body. People with sword essence in their bodies can become sword bearers. As expected of Zetian, Zetian was able to quickly analyze the situation, saving Guhan the trouble of explaining it to him. That is right. Those with sword essence in their bodies can become sword bearers. Guhan nodded. The plan was proceeding quickly. It would not take long before this instant's dungeon was over. So, Lord Guhan, how can I become a sword bearer? I Ching asked curiously. It is very simple. We need to find your sword lady, Guhan replied with a smile. Chapter 303. Lord Guhan, how should I find my own sword maiden? I Ching asked Guhan. At this moment, there was a flame of desire burning in I Ching's eyes. After knowing that he could become a sword wielder, the burning desire in I Ching's heart burned fiercely. Any sword can be your sword maiden. Of course, most of them can't be your sword maiden. Guhan briefly explained the situation of the sword maiden to I Ching. I suggest you search the surroundings to see if there are any swords or the like. Hold her in your hand for 10 seconds, and you will know whether she is your sword maiden or not. Guhan's words were actually quite nonsensical. Think about it, in modern society, many humans had experimented over and over again in places like the Sword Pavilion that were filled with sword ladies, but none of them could find a sword lady that could synchronize with them. How could an ordinary person find a few broken swords to experiment with in a desert like this? However, that sentence only applied to normal people. It didn't apply to a prodigy like the heaven-covering Sword Emperor. If it were up to him, he would probably be able to successfully synchronize 3 or 4 sword ladies. Moreover, the system's quest notification clearly told Guhan that there was an ancient sword lady, the White Iron Sword, that could be synchronized with I Ching nearby. Alright, I remember that the chief once collected a few swords. I'll go and ask the chief for one. Although I Ching was quick-witted and shrewd, he was still a young man. He could not hide the excitement in his voice. Sure, but what about these Yuan Kos? Guhan pushed Yuan Ko's problem to I Ching. If they escape later, I'm afraid they'll hurt other humans. Guhan looked at I Ching with a smile. There was always something unfathomable in his eyes. I Ching understands. If I may be so bold, I'd like to borrow your sword maiden from Lord Guhan. Just now, when Guhan was explaining the basic situation of the Sword Maiden to I Ching, he had told I Ching that only the Sword Maiden could attack the Yuan Shen. Sure, no problem. Guhan's hand touched the hilt of the Heaven-Reliant sword. Then, the Heaven-Reliant sword immediately roared through Guhan's sword mark. Surnamed Gu, if you dare hand over my original body to I Ching, don't even think about commanding me for the rest of your life. Good fella, I Tian doesn't even address this heroine as this heroine and calls herself Old Mother. Looks like she's really pissed off. King Yu, sorry to trouble you. Guhan was helpless and could only ask King Yu for help. Since I Tian refuses to yield, then this king naturally won't yield as well. Otherwise, wouldn't this king be even lower than I Tian? King Yu also rejected Guhan's request. Guhan smiled bitterly and could only take out the Qingpin sword. Fortunately, Qingpin's main body didn't like to log into the game. Otherwise, if the three sword ladies didn't let anyone touch them, Guhan would be embarrassed. Here. Guhan handed the Qingpin sword to I Ching. When I Ching received the Qingpin sword, his body suddenly started to tremble, especially the tip of the Qingpin sword. It kept shaking, fully displaying the fear in I Ching's heart. Although he was afraid, I Ching's movements didn't slow down. His eyes were wide open as he stared at the four female experts lying on the ground. Then, he raised the sword and the Qingpin sword accurately pierced the hearts of the four female high school students. Is this okay, Lord Guhan? The girls on the ground started to bleed profusely. The blood quickly dyed the ground red. At the same time, their bodies started to twitch like chickens and ducks that had their necks cut and their blood drained. I Ching resisted the urge to vomit and returned the Qingpin sword to Guhan. First time killing Yuan Ko? Guhan took the Qingpin sword and asked casually. Yes, first time. I Ching nodded. By then, the Yuan Ko girls had stopped twitching. Their skin was pale. At the same time, a vortex appeared in the middle of the space. That meant that the Yuan Ko girls had died. Not bad. You acted quickly, your movements were simple and precise. In the future, you will become an excellent swordsman. Perhaps you will stand at the peak of all swordsmen. Guhan patted I Ching's shoulder. This is your first time, but you will experience it many times in the future. As you kill more, you will get used to it. We are all people whose hands are stained with blood. However, you must remember, this blood must not include our own human blood. System prompt. Quest objective I Ching has killed Yuan Ko. Number 4. Please keep up the good work. The more Yuan Ko I Ching kills, the higher the instant's dungeon evaluation. Lord Guhan. Lord Guhan. Thank you for saving our Zongzi tribe. Our Zongzi tribe's gratitude towards Lord Guhan is like a torrential river, or like the Yellow River flooding out of control. Seeing Guhan, Chief Yun knelt in front of Guhan and flattered Guhan loudly. This line was passed down by Yun's grandfather's 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 grandfather. It was said that when facing an undefeatable opponent, one had to say this line decisively. It might even save one's life. The old man even hugged Guhan's feet and wanted to kiss Guhan's shoes, but was pushed away by the disgusted Guhan. Mr. Chief, eliminating Yuan Ko is what we swordsmen should do. I can't accept it. If you continue like this, I will leave immediately. Yes, I was rash. Hearing Guhan's words, Yun hurriedly retreated, maintaining a certain distance from Guhan. Ahem, Mr. Chief, I have a piece of good news for you. When I was fighting with Yuan Yen just now, I discovered that this little brother actually has the talent to become a sword-bearer. With a little guidance and some luck, he can become a true sword-bearer. Is that so? Yun, who thought he would be overjoyed to hear that a native sword-bearer had appeared in his tribe, had a strange expression on his face. He wanted to say something, but words failed him. Vaguely, there was a hint of disapproval and hatred. Is that so? That's great. I Ching is Ida's child and has Ida's bloodline. Our tribe has long felt that he can become a swordsman. He will definitely become one. From this sentence, it was obvious that Iyun was not happy about I Ching becoming a swordsman. He was even a little unwilling. Grandpa Chief, don't worry. I Ching am not that ungrateful Ida. I Ching was raised by the tribe. Without the tribe's care, I, an orphan, would have long become a skeleton in the desert. If I Ching become a swordsman, I will use my life to protect the tribe's safety. I will make our tribe the strongest tribe in the desert. I Ching will never leave this tribe. I Ching could tell that Iyun was worried. He stepped forward and held Iyun's hand tightly. He said this in a firm and heartfelt manner. Good, good, good. Hearing I Ching's words, Iyun was moved to tears. I Ching, the tribe did not raise you for nothing. Grandpa Chief knows that you are different from your father. When I leave, I will leave the tribe to you. I believe that under your leadership, our tribe will be able to live well. Grandpa, child. Two pairs of hands, one white and tender, the other dry, held each other tightly. No one knew how much sincerity there was in this. Liar. In the end, you still left this place. You said that you would stay in the Zongzi tribe forever. What a complete joke. I Tian, who was in the scabbard, sneered. It seemed that I Ching still left the Zongzi tribe. He did not fulfill the promise he made in front of the chief. Grandpa, I remember that our tribe has a few treasured swords. Can you take them out for me to try? Who knows, my sword lady might be among them. I Ching said anxiously. He was eager to obtain his sword lady. Of course, no problem. Grandpa will bring you there to try. Iyun agreed readily. He led I Ching into the small building where he met with Gohan. He took out a bag from a hidden place and opened it. There were a few rusty treasured swords inside. Gohan only needed to glance at the pocket to know that I Ching would not be able to find his sword lady in it. Because not only were the swords rusty, none of them looked like white iron swords. Since the system said that I Ching's ancient sword lady was a white iron sword, then I Ching must be a white iron sword. The messy swords in the bag could not be successful. Sure enough, I Ching held the swords in his hand for tens of seconds, but none of them had any reaction. Although he failed, I Ching did not seem depressed. He returned the swords to Iyun and asked, Grandpa Chief, I remember that our tribe should have more than 10 treasured swords. Why are there only 4 left? Ai child, you don't know. A few days ago, we escaped from the oasis in a hurry. The remaining swords were left in the oasis. I'm afraid they are all in the hands of the Mastiff tribe. Grandpa can't do anything about it. Iyun sighed a few times. Suddenly, he had an idea. Coincidentally, Lord Gohan is here. Why don't you beg Lord Gohan to bring you to the Mastiff tribe? With Lord Gohan's help, the Mastiff tribe would definitely not dare to resist Lord Gohan's will. That's not a good idea. How can we trouble Lord Gohan for such a matter? I Ching shook his head desperately, indicating his refusal. It's fine. It's just a trip to the Mastiff tribe. Compared to having a new sword-bearer, this little bit of trouble is nothing. Gohan obviously would not reject it. If not, he would not be able to complete his dungeon. Chapter 304. The oasis that the Bayan tribe robbed from the Zongzi tribe was not too far from the Zongzi tribe. It took them less than 10 minutes to reach it. Of course, Gohan also contributed to this. Gohan grabbed I Ching's neck and ran at a speed of 60 kilometers per hour. Under normal circumstances, it would take I Ching at least 1 or 2 hours to reach the oasis. Master Gohan, we're here. Be careful, don't be discovered by the Bayan tribe. After arriving at the outskirts of the Bayan tribe, I Ching hurriedly called for Gohan to stop. Some unwilling tribesmen wanted to secretly investigate this oasis to see if there was a chance to take it back. As a result, they were discovered by the Bayan tribe, who chased them all the way back to their temporary stronghold. 3 or 4 young men died, so I Ching instinctively told Gohan to stop and be careful. Be careful of what? Gohan threw I Ching onto the sand. We'll walk in openly. Do you think the Bayan tribe would dare to attack a sword-bearer? They wouldn't dare. I Ching rubbed his head. Even if you beat them to death, they wouldn't dare to attack Master Sword-bearer. Thus, Gohan led King Yu and I Ching towards the oasis in the desert. Two scouts, who were observing from the observation tower, immediately discovered Gohan and I Ching. They immediately grabbed wooden sticks and hit a broken gong beside them. Very soon, a large group of people with disheveled clothes rushed out with all kinds of weapons in their hand. These people's weapons were different. Some of them were holding pitch-black guns, which were very intimidating. Most of them could only hold the sharpened wooden sticks in a very tragic manner. However, looking at their physical quality and condition, these people were indeed much stronger than the people of the Zongzi tribe. Each of them was full of fighting spirit. No wonder they could drive the Zongzi tribe out of this oasis. I was wondering who it was. So it's you, I Ching. You were lucky enough to escape with your lowly life. Why are you so eager to return it to me now? Among this group of aggressive people, a young man wearing a complete set of clothes stood out from the crowd. Although this set of clothes was full of pudding, the fact that he could wear a complete set of clothes showed that this young man had an extraordinary status in the Taowu tribe. His name is Quan. He is the son of the Bayan tribe's chief. He is very brave. He was the first one to rush into the oasis that day. I Ching whispered to Gohan. He also specifically pointed out that this young man was the chief's son. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who he is. Go tell him my identity and ask them to let us in. Gohan said disdainfully. Yes, sir. With Gohan's support, I Ching was very confident. He swaggered to the opposite side of Quan and loudly announced, Quan, this is the sword-bearer from Yanjing City. Now that the sword-bearer has something to do in the oasis, get out of the way and don't block the sword-bearer's way. Looking at I Ching's arrogance, Gohan couldn't help but sigh. He didn't expect the dignified Zhejiandi to be his follower. Unfortunately, this was only in the game. It didn't have any practical meaning. Sword-bearer. Quan was taken aback. Only then did he notice that there were two people beside I Ching, a man and a woman. They were wearing clothes and pants, as well as all kinds of strange props. They were much more advanced than what he was wearing. To think that he thought that the clothes he was wearing were the best in the desert. Compared to them, he was so ashamed that he didn't even know where he was. According to the usual plot, Quan would immediately order all his subordinates to attack Gohan. Since this guy dared to wear better clothes than him, Quan would definitely snatch this guy's clothes and put them on himself. Then, he would completely disregard the problem of Gohan's strength. In any case, he would just give Gohan a chance to act cool. If he didn't make a move, how could Gohan act cool? Unfortunately, this Quan didn't play according to the plot. He was just a young man with intelligence. After observing the clothes, Quan believed half of I Ching's words. Even if all the clothes of the tribes in the desert were gathered together, they wouldn't be able to come up with a set of clothes like this. These two people must have come from somewhere other than the desert. They had traveled through mountains and rivers, passing through countless territories of Yuan-Ko to arrive here. If it was an ordinary person, they would have died countless times already. Only the sword-bearer could do this. So it's the sword-bearer. Quan has been disrespectful. Step aside, let the sword-bearer enter our tribe. Quan immediately ordered all his subordinates to disperse, making a path for them. Quan's thinking was very simple. If Gohan was really the sword-bearer, then no matter what, he couldn't beat him. It was better to serve the sword-bearer well. If Gohan wasn't the sword-bearer and was just used by I Ching to scare people, then it didn't matter. Once they entered the Bayan tribe, would these two people still be able to escape? There are a lot of smart people in this dungeon. Gohan smiled indifferently and strode forward. Your Bayan tribe is lucky. I Ching muttered in his heart. He was looking forward to this idiot Anquan attacking Gohan and provoking Gohan. Then, he would drive the entire Bayan tribe out of the oasis. This way, their Zongzi tribe would have an opportunity. Fine, as long as I can become the sword-bearer, it won't be too late to settle the score with the Bayan tribe, I Ching said in his heart. The Zongzi tribe and the Bayan tribe had long been incompatible with each other like fire and water. Please. Anquan led Gohan into the oasis. It was in this oasis that Gohan saw the misty rain of Jiangnan. The sky full of sand dunes was not excessive. It was directly connected to a piece of moist land. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived at a land of fish and rice. Green trees and red flowers were everywhere. There was even a smell of straw in the air. Sir, please take a look. This piece of land is the most important thing to feed our more than 300 people of the Bayan tribe. It is the most important thing for us to survive. Anquan suddenly said, as if he was afraid that Gohan was the one who came to destroy the land. Humph, shameless bastard. This land was clearly cultivated by our Zongzi tribe. When did it belong to your Bayan tribe? I Ching, who was behind Gohan, said loudly. Anyway, with Gohan here, he had nothing to be afraid of. More than 10 years ago, it was your Zongzi tribe who snatched this oasis from our Bayan tribe. Now we are just taking back what originally belonged to us. Is there anything wrong with that? Anquan said righteously. It seemed like this oasis was also snatched from someone else by the Zongzi tribe. I Ching, I'm only here to help you find your sword lady. I won't interfere in the matter between your tribe and Anquan's tribe. Keep your petty thoughts to yourself. Gohan said indifferently. I Ching's expression immediately turned gloomy, while Anquan let out a sigh of relief. It seemed like he didn't have to worry about the sword-bearer attacking his tribe anymore. However, this also confirmed that this man was a genuine sword-bearer. The group of people silently walked in the oasis. This oasis was not big, and the fields were gone in a short while. Seeing this scene, King Yu curiously asked, Strange, I see that there is normal land under the sand. Why don't you clear away the sand? Wouldn't that create more oases? King Yu's words hit the nail on the head. After all, this was a water town in Jiangnan. It was not far from the sea. Although it had been transformed into a desert by Yuan Yan's magic, the effect of the magic was not unchangeable as long as the surviving humans worked hard. The fertile land covered by the sand could be reclaimed. It wouldn't take long for the desert to return to its original state. However, after hearing King Yu's question, both Anquan and I Ching fell silent. They didn't say a word, as if they didn't want to answer King Yu's question at all. Why aren't you talking? Answer King Yu's question. King Yu was a bit angry. Why wasn't anyone willing to answer such a simple question? The reason is very simple. It's not that these people don't want to restore this place to a land of fish and rice. It's because they can't restore this place to a land of fish and rice. Am I right, I Ching, Anquan? Gohan meaningfully looked at the two people who didn't speak. Sir is wise. I Ching and Anquan praised. How could they not want to live a life of ample food and clothing? But what if the price was their lives? The reason why humans could survive in this desert was because Yuan Ko didn't like the desert's environment. They didn't want to enter the desert, so they naturally didn't want to kill the desert's survivors. This was the fundamental reason why these survivors could struggle in the desert for more than 200 years. Once the desert disappeared, this place would return to Jiangnan's water village. That would be the time for these survivors to die. Therefore, they would rather live a life of hunger than change the environment here. It was all for the sake of survival. Anquan's father, the chief of the Bayan tribe, was already respectfully welcoming Gohan's arrival in front of a brick house. Anquan had already sent someone to report Gohan's news to the chief. Compared to Anquan, his father's eyes were more sinister. If Anquan was only 60% sure that Gohan was the sword-bearer, then Anquan's father was 90% sure because he had dealt with the sword-bearer once. After a series of hypocritical pleasantries, Gohan straightforwardly explained his intentions to the chief. The chief pondered for a moment. Sir, it's not that I'm willing to listen to Sir's orders. It's just that I Ching's Zongzi tribe and our Bai and tribe are mortal enemies. If I give these swords to him, and he really becomes the sword bearer, then there's no reason for I Ching not to retaliate. I hope Sir can understand. Chapter 305. Your reason is very good. I understand it very well. When Gohan heard the words of the Bayan tribe's tribal chief, he didn't get angry, he just faintly replied, "But I also have my reasons. I hope that you can consider it from the perspective of humanity. Humanity is now in a crisis of life and death. If we want to drive these Yuan Kos out of our world, we need a large number of sword bearers. The more the better." The chairman of Yanjing City once said such a famous sentence. Do you know? Gohan suddenly asked the chief of the Bayan tribe. The chief of the Bayan tribe was a bit confused. He had never been to Yanjing City, so how could he know what the chairman of Yanjing City had said? He didn't even know that the supreme leader of Yanjing City was called the chairman. Wasn't this the title of the leader of a reactionary force before the Great Calamity? Shouldn't the heroic leader of justice be called the chairman? How would I know what the big shots of Yanjing City have said? I'm just a lowly weed. I've never had the honor to hear the famous words of the chairman, the chief of the Bayan tribe said humbly. It doesn't matter if you don't know, I'll tell you. Gohan's face was full of smiles. The chairman once taught us that the sword bearers are great, they are the hope of mankind, they are all existences higher than ordinary humans. If humans want to survive, they must kneel in front of the sword bearers and use everything they have to serve the great sword bearers. As the old saying goes, the more soldiers Xiang Yu summons, the better. Now I also have a saying. Sword bearers, the more the better. In my opinion, it's a good deal to exchange the lives of 10 ordinary people for the birth of a sword bearer. Mr. Chief, do you think the chairman is right? This sentence wasn't fabricated by Gohan. It was something that a chairman had indeed said in history. That period of time happened to be the most difficult period of the first difficult sword era. Humans only had 3 base cities, 2 of which had been breached. Only one city, Yanjing, was left standing on Earth. At that time, the chairman of Yanjing City hated the fact that there were too few sword bearers. He launched a crazy plan to create sword bearers and had scientists frantically research ways to increase the number of sword bearers. Most of the current black technology related to sword bearers started at that time. For some reason, it evolved into a culture of worshipping sword bearers. At that time, sword bearers had almost become the religion of mankind. It was stipulated that every human must satisfy all of the sword bearers' requests. Even if the sword bearers fancied your wife, you had to obediently give up your bedroom. In short, it was a crazy period. All kinds of things that are now unacceptable were happening in that era. As the highest leader of mankind, it was only natural that the chairman of the Yanjing City Council would say something that sounded a little anti-human. Later, this worship gradually subsided, and the Sword Committee sealed most of the historical information about this period. Even Sword Maiden Online basically avoided the stories that happened during that period. There were many famous battles and campaigns during that period, and they could be passed down as dungeons. However, that period of history happened after Zhetian Jiendi became Jiendi. Of course, the chairman of Yanjing City didn't say such words, but the people of Bayan tribe didn't know about it at all. On the contrary, they, who knew how cruel the path of survival was, agreed with this sentence from the bottom of their hearts. As long as there could be a sword bearer in Bayan tribe, it would be worth it even if they had to bury half of the tribe's population. As long as they didn't bury their loved ones, it didn't matter if other people died. Hearing Gohan's words, cold sweat instantly appeared on the forehead of the Bayan tribe's chief. Especially when Gohan secretly ordered King Yu to use the advanced skill death of King Yu. The 3 sword slaves crawled out of the soil like zombies and surrounded the Bayan tribe's chief in a triangular formation. The air in the entire room froze. Sir is right, we were too petty. Seeing that the situation was not right, Anquan immediately stood in front of his father, and said to his father, "Father, compared to the righteousness of mankind, what is the life and death of our Taowu tribe? Father, hand over the sword maidens you collected to Lord Guhan." "Yes, yes, yes." The chief said yes 3 times and opened a secret compartment. Anquan jumped in and came out with a dozen swords in just a few steps. Guhan took a quick glance and saw the white iron sword among the swords. He knew that the second main mission was done. "I Ching, go and touch these sword ladies," Guhan said to I Ching. I Ching nodded excitedly and immediately rushed to the pile of swords and started testing them one by one. "Sir Guhan, to become a sword bearer, I just have to touch these swords?" Anquan's eyes lit up when he heard what Guhan said to I Ching. He keenly sensed some important information. "That's right. You can also touch them. It's best if you succeed. This way we humans will have 2 more sword bearers," Guhan said indifferently. Even a fool could see that this dungeon was I Ching's home dungeon. It was a dungeon to promote the great deeds of the young heaven-covering Jiendi. It had nothing to do with Anquan, who was just a side character. Unfortunately, Anquan did not think so. His ability was not inferior to I Ching's. Why could he, I Ching, obtain the favor of a sword-bearer while Anquan could not? Nobles, generals, and ministers all had gut. Heavens! What happened? Jade Emperor above, what a dazzling light! At this time, I Ching finally touched the most important sword lady in his life, the white iron sword. The moment he touched it, the white iron sword blossomed with a dazzling light and entered I Ching's body. And I Ching, the young heaven-covering Jiendi, also began the first synchronization in his life. So this is a sword-bearer? Seeing this scene, Anquan's eyes were filled with envy and jealousy. He hoped that the person shrouded in the light was him, and not this damn I Ching. How good would it be if everything was reversed? Anquan could only be envious and jealous. He had touched each of these swords no less than 10 times. If his sword lady was among them, he would have become a sword-bearer long ago. "None of you are allowed to touch I Ching's body. I will kill you." After I Ching was petrified, some people curiously wanted to touch I Ching's body. In the end, they shrank back in fear after hearing Guhan's words. Guhan's words were filled with murderous intent. He would really kill someone. This is unexpectedly boring. Guhan suddenly felt that this dungeon was too boring. Along the way, he found I Ching, killed a tank, and showed off his strength in the tribe. According to the main storyline, a group of Yuan Ko would rush to their death. All Guhan needed to do was protect I Ching and kill the attacking Yuan Ko. After that, the dungeon would end and he would return to the Dungeon Evaluation Center to receive his reward. It seemed quite boring. Other than seeing the young heaven-covering Jiendi, which made Guhan a little excited, there was nothing else interesting. None of the Yuan Ko here could block Guhan's sword. If Guhan got serious, it would just be a boring massacre. The dungeon was not challenging at all. As a side dungeon of the ancient sword dungeon, the majority of the players had a good opinion of it. The previous Tiger-class tank, Yuan Ko, had required a lot of tactics to kill it. There were more than 10,000 posts on the forum on how to eliminate the Little Bean tank. There was also the wave of Yuan Ko that would come later, which required a lot of skill to survive. There were more than 100,000 posts about this wave of Yuan Ko. All in all, this dungeon was a single-player dungeon that required all new players to study and execute their strategies carefully. Many Ancient Sword Dreaming Souls players would be stuck at this dungeon more than a dozen times before they could obtain an A rank rating. The entire process was filled with excitement for these players. According to the analysis of the players, Heroes Begin with Insignificance, was a dungeon that allowed players to train their various basic combat skills. As long as they could defeat all the Yuan Ko in this dungeon with their own strength, they would have a basic understanding of how to fight against Yuan Ko. This was only the first benefit of this dungeon. The second benefit was that it allowed players to train their ability to get along with others. When facing the hostility of the Zongzi tribe and I Ching, players needed to learn how to become friends with them. When facing the resistance of the Zongzi tribe, players needed to learn how to convince them to listen to them. Thirdly, and also the most important point, the creators of this dungeon hoped that the players could experience the growth of the sky covering Jiandi I Ching, and experience I Ching's indomitable, courageous, and unwavering qualities. Bat probably didn't know that players could analyze such things from this instance dungeon. However, it was undeniable that this dungeon was a very interesting dungeon for new players. It was a pity that this dungeon had a freak like Gohan, who could easily crush the dungeon. It lost its original intention of training the players. This also made Gohan feel that it was not interesting at all. Sir Chief, bad news, bad news. We just found a large wave of Yuan Ko coming towards our oasis from the northwest. Just like the Zongzi tribe, there was another reckless Yuan Ko charging towards them. How many? How many of them are there? Don't King tell me a large wave. How would I know how many there are? 100, number 200, no, at least 300, at least 300 people, Sir Chief. The messenger panicked. What? How could this be? The chief jumped up, then felt dizzy and fainted. 300 Yuan Ko, our Zongzi tribe is dead this time. This was the last sentence that came to the chief's mind. System notification. Quest 2 completed. I Ching has synchronized with Bai Tai Jian. System notification. Main quest updated. Quest 3. Protect the oasis. A large wave of Yuan Ko attacks. Please lead I Ching to defeat this group of Yuan Ko. Please note, let I Ching kill Yuan Ko with his own hands to accumulate dungeon evaluation. It's getting more and more boring. Gohan sighed in his heart. Forget it, let's finish this dungeon as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Gohan didn't know that this dungeon that made him feel extremely boring would bring about all kinds of consequences that Gohan could never have imagined, causing him to be in huge trouble. Chapter 306. When I Ching woke up from his petrified state, Gohan didn't explain anything to I Ching. He directly grabbed I Ching's neck and ran to the northwest entrance. There, countless people with all sorts of weapons were gathered there. Even though their hands were trembling, they still stood there without any intention of running. What are these humans standing here for? They don't have weapons with sword essence, so they can't attack Yuan Ko. They're just throwing away their lives here. Seeing these humans immersed in fear, Yu Wang asked in confusion. She thought that the humans here should be running away. Didn't you notice the women and children who were packing up? Gohan was a bit annoyed. If they all choose to run, then most of the women and children will die here. These men are their husbands and fathers. They can only use their lives to delay Yuan Ko so that their wives and children have a chance to escape. Gohan's explanation was a bit annoyed, but the huge tragedy contained within was unavoidable. In this era, when humans faced Yuan Ko's attack, they could only run or wait for death. Most of the time, they used their own deaths to exchange for the lives of the people they cared about. This was the tragedy of the human world. This king will definitely save them. This king doesn't want to see these men die here. Yu Wang was moved by these people even though they were just data. Gohan didn't pay attention to Yu Wang's words. All of his attention was on Yuan Ko, who was rushing over like a flood. These Yuan Ko were actually the same as the 4 female high school students, Yuan Ko. They all looked and dressed like female high school students. They wore sailor suits with white tops and green bottoms. When their green miniskirts fluttered in the wind, one could almost see a mysterious white domain inside. What a group of cute girls. If their eyes weren't red, they would look like beasts that wanted to eat people. It should also be noted that these girls were not unarmed. They were holding long wooden rifles in their hands and lined up neatly. If their gender and attire were ignored, they could be said to be a well-trained army. Yuan Ko's name: German High School Commando Team. Level: Mouse, two-dimensional world. Anime world, entry instance dungeon. A small portion of the instance dungeon HP. Half a star attack. Half star agility. Half a star demonic energy. None. Ability: proficient military skills and a Mauser 98 sniper rifle. Ultimate move: crouching shot introduction. An ordinary female high school student in Japan. Due to the popularity of firearms in this world, they have undergone various military and firearms training and have mastered proficient military skills. Because the high school was run by the Germans, the school's ethos was very respectful of Germany. All the weapons and training methods used were German weapons and method. They strictly followed orders and were a troop with a strong will to fight. After coming to the real world, because of their German military style, they were recruited by Yuan Ko, the Nazi King Hitler, and formed into a unit called the German High School Commando Team. Commando soldiers are not scary on their own. Any sword mistress can beat them up. However, once they form a unit, they must be careful not to be shot into a sieve by the enemy before they can even attack. Pay special attention to the commando team's weapon is a Mauser 98 sniper rifle. This rifle is extremely accurate and can hit an opponent from 800 meters away. The downside is that it has a very slow firing rate and a long time between shot. No threat. Gohan skimmed through the information. Although there are a lot more of them. No threat was not a threat to Gohan, but to a normal ancient sword wielder, this was a huge threat. Hundreds of Yuan Ko armed with guns, even if each bullet could only deal 1 damage to the close-range shield, and even if the hit rate was only 10%, it would only take a few rounds of firing. After a dozen rounds of firing, the pitiful 50-point close-range shield of the ancient sword wielder would be depleted. The most successful strategy on the forum was to instruct the players to hide with I Ching in a hidden place. They would order their own sword mistresses and I Ching's sword mistresses to hide in the sand. When Yuan Ko's troops got close, they would charge into the middle of Yuan Ko's formation and engage in close-range combat with the Yuan Ko. Sword Mistress Online did not have an automatic identification system. Whether it was the sword mistress or the Yuan Ko, their attacks could hurt their own people. Therefore, when the sword mistresses charged into the formation, most of the Yuan Ko's shots would hit their own people. This way, they could use Yuan Ko's hands to kill their enemies. However, there was a downside to this strategy. Most of the Yuan Ko's would die to Yuan Ko. The number of Yuan Ko's sword mistresses that died to I Ching's sword mistresses would not be many. This way, the dungeon's rating would not be very high, and it would be difficult to get a B rank rating. So, of course, Gohan wouldn't choose this method to complete the dungeon. Gohan wouldn't come to this dungeon at all. If he didn't get an SS grade or above, then he wouldn't be able to keep his face as a commander. I Ching, follow behind me. Don't be afraid. Gohan calmly ordered I Ching as he watched the high school female assault squad approaching from afar. Then, he walked out of his bunker and faced the enemy's muzzles. Lord Gohan, shouldn't we lie in ambush and wait for them to get close before charging in? Our sword mistresses are melee fighters after all. I Ching was dumbfounded when he saw Gohan's actions. He quickly advised Gohan against it and even gave a battle plan. After listening carefully, wasn't it the most practical plan that was announced on the forum? I Ching was indeed the future Jiandi. In just a moment, he had come up with the best battle plan. It's fine. Just follow behind me. I can guarantee that you won't die. Gohan was unmoved. He still asked I Ching to hide behind him and follow him forward. I Ching hesitated for a moment. He gritted his teeth and spat on the ground. Then, he chased after Gohan and followed behind him, facing the hundreds of black muzzles. Ready! Open fire! At the sight of someone jumping out, the female high school seniors immediately aimed at Gu Han. When Gu Han entered their firing range of 800 meters, at the command of the officers, all the muzzles lit up like fireworks. Hundreds of bullets were fired at Gu Han at the same time. System prompt: you have received bullet damage. Personal shield energy, -1. System prompt: you have received bullet damage. Personal shield energy, -1. With the support of the famous sword-class sword mistress Yuang's shield, the mouse-level Yuan Ko's bullets couldn't even break through Gohan's defense. If it wasn't for the minimum damage limit of 1 point, it might have even been 0.1 points of damage. This damage was meaningless to Gohan. It was no wonder Gohan would put on airs and face the Yuan Ko's muzzles. Ready, open fire. As Gu Han continued to advance, the female high school commando squad immediately dropped to the ground. Using a standard crouching shooting posture, they fired volleys after volleys at Gu Han. Although their aim was good, and 10 to 20 out of 100 bullets hit Gu Han's body, it was a pity that it was useless. The energy bar of Gu Han's protective shield did not seem to move at all. This king is going to charge. Yu Wang, who was with Gohan, had taken dozens of bullets and was filled with rage. Seeing that the Yuan Ko were less than 200 meters away, he planned on charging in. No, don't move. Gu Han stopped King Yu's actions. He wasn't worried that King Yu would be in any danger if he charged in. If he was fine facing the Yuan Shen's attacks, then King Yu wouldn't be in any danger. The reason why Gohan didn't let Yu Wang in was because he was afraid that Yu Wang would kill quickly. If he killed all the Yuan Kos, what would I Ching do? How would he get an evaluation of SS or above? Therefore, Gohan stopped Yu Wang. He wanted to do it himself. Gu Han drew the heaven-reliant sword from its scabbard and infused the sword essence in his hand into it. A second later, an invisible and untouchable sword chi from the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword descends upon the abyss, shot out from the blade of the sword and slashed at the young girls. Using sword energy to deal with the mouse-level Yuan Kos, Gohan was bullying Yuan Ko too much. It was no different from using a machine gun to strafe a baby. These female students could not even see the sword chi emitted by Gu Han. They only felt that their hair was suddenly blown away by the huge phoenix. They wanted to press their hair back with their hands, but they felt a chill in their lower bodies. Then, they lost their support and fell to the ground. I Ching looked at everything in front of him in shock. He didn't understand what had happened. He only saw Gohan wave his sword, and a few seconds later, over 20 pairs of smooth and beautiful girls' legs were cut off at the knees. Then, the Yuan Kos fell to the ground like dominoes. Although they wouldn't die in a short time, their combat strength was basically gone. Gohan sent out a few more sword energy. None of the remaining girls' Yuan Kos were spared. Just like the 20 or so girls before, they were all cut off at the knees by Gohan and became crippled. Gohan had specially chosen the position of the knees because the blood vessels there were protected by the kneecap. If the knees were cut off, the blood loss wouldn't be as fast as other parts of the body. These Yuan Kos could live for at least another 10 minutes. It's over. Seeing the aggressive Yuan Ko's army, I Ching was prepared to die. He followed behind Gohan and fought. He had thought that he would have to go through a battle of life and death before he could obtain the final victory. He hadn't expected that in less than 30 seconds, all the Yuan Kos would fall. Although they weren't dead, they had only been stabbed once. I Ching, release your sword mistress. Gohan coolly sheathed heavenly sword into its scabbard. Just like how you killed the 4 Yuan Kos, kill these Yuan Kos as well. Gohan was really a good guy. This was equivalent to him beating all the monsters to a critical state and letting I Ching kill them. This was the kind of teammate you needed when playing games. Chapter 307. Father, Father! Inside the chieftain's house, the chieftain of the Mastiff tribe was shaken awake by Quan. The first thing the chieftain did after waking up was to immediately hug his son and loudly shout, "Unquan, take all the women and children and escape from here. From now on, you are the chieftain of our Mastiff tribe, do you understand?" "Dad, what are you doing?" Unquan pushed his father away. "Why are we running away? I'm not leaving." "Good son, Dad knows you don't want me to leave, but Dad is the chief of the tribe. Without Dad to lead them, they will not fight with all their strength. Dad must be at the forefront to buy time for you to escape." "Not good, I can't talk nonsense anymore. How long have I been unconscious? How far are those Yuan Ko now?" "Okay, Dad, don't worry about those Yuan Ko, they are all dead." Unquan shouted. "Dead?" The chief began to be confused again. "More than 300 Yuan Ko, all dead?" "Not 300, at most 100 or so." The informant was scared silly and spouted nonsense, Unquan corrected. "What's the difference between 300 and 100? One of them can destroy our whole tribe." The chief muttered. His mind was gradually waking up. But how did these 100 Yuan Ko die just like that? Could it be that they were killed by the sword-bearer named Gohan? Who else could it be? Unquan nodded. Just now, he followed closely behind Gohan and watched the whole process of Gohan's massacre from the fence. Gohan braved the rain of bullets and moved forward fearlessly. Then, with just a few swings of his sword in the air, all the knees of Yuan Ko were cut off. This kind of fighting ability completely changed Unquan's understanding of Yuan Ko and the sword-bearer. It turned out that the seemingly powerful Yuan Ko was so fragile. It turned out that humans could become powerful to this extent after having a sword mistress. No wonder the chairman of Yanjing City was willing to exchange the lives of 10 ordinary people for a sword-bearer. To Unquan, it would be worth it even if he had to sacrifice 100 lives to exchange for it. Unquan completely repeated the battle process to his father. The chief did not speak for a long time. After a long time, he finally said, "Fortunately, son, you reacted quickly just now. Otherwise, that sword-bearer would have really killed me." Back on the battlefield, under Gohan's command, I Ching's white iron sword began to stab the female high school students who had lost their legs one by one. The white iron sword accurately stabbed into the heart of these Yuan Ko, creating a large hole. Surging blood sprayed more than a meter high. In less than 10 seconds, these female high school students who had been stabbed had all returned to the dimensional vortex. System notification. Mission target I Ching has killed Yuan Ko, 118. Please keep up the good work. The more Yuan Ko I Ching kills, the higher the dungeon rating. System notification. Mission target I Ching has killed Yuan Ko, 119. Please keep up the good work. The more Yuan Ko I Ching kills, the higher the dungeon rating. When I Ching killed the last Yuan Ko, the number was fixed at 120. This meant that there were a total of 116 soldiers in this female assault team. According to the dungeon rating rules, as long as I Ching killed 110 Yuan Ko I Ching, he could obtain an SSS rating. With the help of Gohan's heaven-defying sword energy, I Ching killed all the Yuan Ko I Ching. Not a single one died at the hands of Gohan or King Yu. The SSS rating seemed to be in his grasp. This is getting more and more boring. The dungeon is going to end soon. I should go back and study the Challenge League in 2 days. Gohan thought silently. According to the dungeon process, when this wave of Yuan Ko I Ching would be able to officially become a qualified sword bearer, Gohan would also successfully complete his quest. He could return to the Quest Evaluation Center to receive his quest reward. System notification. Mission target I Ching has killed Yuan Ko, 120. Quest 3 completed. Quest updated. System notification. Congratulations, you have triggered the hidden main quest, Quest 4. You can now choose to leave the dungeon and head to the Quest Evaluation Center to complete the quest. You can also choose to continue with the Quest 4. System notification. The difficulty of the quest 4 and the subsequent quests is extremely high. However, after completing the quest 4 and the subsequent quests, you will receive a special reward. Please make your choice wisely. What's going on? Another hidden Easter egg quest? When Gohan heard the system notification, he was shocked. What was going on? This dungeon was the same as the Wudong Peak dungeon. It also had a hidden Easter egg? As far as Gohan could remember, the Hero's Rise from Insignificance Instance dungeon did not have any Easter egg content. However, Gohan did not pay much attention to this dungeon. He did not know if this Easter egg had been triggered before. What choice do I have? Naturally, Gohan chose to continue with the dungeon. Despite the high difficulty of the subsequent quests, Gohan's blood began to boil. The reason he felt bored was because this dungeon was too easy. This type of dungeon that was like crushing noobs would only make Gohan feel bored. System notification. Quest updated. Quest 3 completed. System notification. Quest 4. Search cause. There have never been so many Yuan Ko-e in the Suzhou Desert. Please search the nearby area to find the reason for the abnormal appearance of Yuan Ko. A new quest notification appeared. As this was a quest that had never appeared before, all the subsequent quests were unknown to Gohan. This was the equivalent of the hidden dungeon of King Arthur's betrayal. Gohan was filled with anticipation for the subsequent storyline. Lord Gohan, I Ching did not disappoint you. I have completed the quest. I Ching returned to Gohan's side. Previously, when he killed 4 female high school students, Yuan Ko, I Ching could not help but vomit. But now that he had killed 116, I Ching was expressionless. No wonder people said that sword emperors were all emotionless humans, and that it was impossible for people with emotions to become sword emperors. Am I a heartless person? Gohan could not help but ask himself. If it was before, Gohan would not hesitate to say that he had no feelings. But now, when Gohan wanted to say this, his eyes could not help but think of Qing Pin and King Yu. This kind of Gohan did not have the face to say that he was heartless. You were shot just now? Gohan noticed some black marks on I Ching's body and asked. Yes, those Yuan Ko's hands were not broken. He often lay on the ground and shot at me. At first, he was inexperienced, so he was shot 25 times. I Ching's face was slightly red. It seemed that being injured by an enemy who had lost the ability to fight was a very embarrassing thing. Hey, you actually remember how many times you were shot? Gohan was once again amazed by I Ching's innate talent. Even when he was being shot, he still had the time to remember how many bullets he had been hit by. His thoughts were even more meticulous than Gohan's. At the very least, Gohan had already forgotten how many bullets he had been hit by. How much damage did one shot do to you? How much energy does your armor have left? Gohan thought of something and asked. It seems to be 3 points of damage. I Ching scratched his head. He was an NPC, so he was not like Gohan, who could hear the system notification about damage. But when Gohan asked, the number 3 popped up in his head. As for energy, there is about 90% left. 3 points of damage, 25 points of damage. That's 75 points of damage. When Gohan heard this string of numbers, he began to calculate in his mind. 75 points of damage is only 10% of his shield's energy. In other words, his armor has more than 750 points of shield energy. I remember that the Sword Maiden form's Guardian ratio is 0. 2750 points. It's the sword essence multiplied by the Guardian ratio. If I do the reverse calculation, I Ching's sword essence should be more than 3250 points. I Ching, how old are you now? Gohan asked. 17. I Ching replied readily and then added, I'll be 18 in 10 months. He's only 17. Gohan exclaimed. This meant that I Ching's 3250 points of innate sword essence were all from his sword essence. 3,250 innate sword essence was enough to enter the top 10 of the innate sword essence leaderboard. It seemed that Zetianjiandi's strength was not entirely based on his hard work and character. Innate sword essence was also a very important factor. Thinking about it, the strongest sword wielder in history, who was also the first sword wielder in the sword ancestor calendar, was said to have surpassed the emperor's sword-level sword wielder. He was an invincible god who could kill 3 desolate-level Yuanhun at the same time. His innate sword element was more than 15,000 quark. His talent was the best among all the sword-bearers. Gohan could not help but think of himself. He only had 9 innate sword essence. If he was ranked at the bottom of his talent, he might still be on the leaderboard. With this talent, could he really become an Emperor's sword-level sword wielder? At that moment, Gohan began to doubt himself. However, he immediately reacted and forcefully cut off this dangerous thought. Once a person began to doubt his own future, he would no longer be able to maintain the courage to move forward. This was the most dangerous part. One may have doubts about his environment, about his friends, about knowledge, about objective and subjective things, about everything, but he must never have doubts about himself. Can I succeed? Am I an idiot? Am I someone who has never used it before? Am I someone who is destined to fail? Once such a thought appeared in your heart, you would not be far from it. This was a piece of advice. Never doubt yourself. Believe that your future is always within reach. Alright, that was the end of the digression. Although Gohan had cut off his own doubts in time, his 2 sword ladies could feel the wavering in his heart through the sword ladies. Although I don't like a certain person, I have to admit that he never doubted himself. It's this world that's wrong, not him. This was what Etian told Gohan through the sword mark. Obviously, the certain person she was talking about was Zetianjiendi. Gohan, your talent is also unique. Think about your sword essence oral fluid. The one who said this was King Yu, who understood Gohan better. Yes, King Yu's words were more effective. Gohan had almost forgotten about his super cheat, sword essence oral fluid. That's right, the heavens were already treating him well. They took away his innate sword essence, but compensated him in other ways. How could he doubt his own future? I Ching, no, Zetianjiendi. Gohan stared at Zetianjiendi, who was walking with his head lowered. I will definitely surpass you, surpass Kanzu, surpass all enemies that I can surpass, and return peace to this world. Sigh, I seem to have forgotten to tell Sir Guhan that apart from me, Bai Tai who was with me was also shot. I Ching, who was walking with his head lowered, thought to himself in distress, and Bai Tai was shot a bit more, a total of 58 bullets. Forget it, since Lord Gohan didn't ask, I'll just keep my mouth shut. Yes, fortunately, Gohan didn't know. Fortunately. Chapter 308. When they entered the 4th hidden mission of the dungeon, the plot of the dungeon began to escalate. It was so crazy that even Gohan was shocked. Just as Gohan and I Ching were about to set off from the oasis to find the reason for the abnormal appearance of so many Yuan Ko, 2 extremely disheveled people stumbled into the Zhou tribe and asked to see Gohan and I Ching. Master Gohan, please save us, Master Gohan. As soon as they saw Gohan, they threw themselves under Gohan and hugged Gohan's legs. Master Gohan, Yuan Ko, there are so many Yuan Ko. The Zongzi tribe is finished. Gohan fixed his eyes on them. Gohan actually knew these 2 people. They were the 2 people from the exploration team that Gohan entered the dungeon in the game. These 2 people were undoubtedly members of the Zongzi tribe. Uncle Long, what's wrong? What happened? The person who was more agitated than Gohan was naturally I Ching, who had just become a sword bearer. He pulled up Uncle Long, who was kneeling on the ground, and questioned him sternly. I Ching. That's right, the chief said that you are a friend of Master Gohan. Hurry up and beg Master Gohan to save our tribe, Uncle Long said incoherently. What happened? Uncle Long, I'm a swordsman now. I can do a lot of things. Hurry up and tell me what happened to the tribe." This was the first time I Ching had lost his cool. He seemed to have gone crazy. "I Ching, there are so many Yuan Hus, all of them are Yuan Hus. Yuan Hus have covered the entire desert. Master Gu Han, the chief told us to come find you. Please be merciful and save our Zongzi tribe." The two of them knelt on the ground and pleaded. "Master Guhan, I'm sorry, I Ching will leave first." Hearing this, I Ching could not stay any longer. He sheathed his white iron sword and immediately fled in the direction of the Zongzi tribe. "Something's wrong." Guhan helplessly shook his head as he watched I Ching leave. After all, he was only 17 years old. His mentality was still immature. Guhan seemed to have forgotten that he was only 18 years old. However, Guhan could not allow I Ching to rush in recklessly. If something else were to happen, this hidden instance dungeon would likely fail. It wasn't easy for him to encounter such an interesting dungeon, so Guhan couldn't bear to end it just like that. On the way back to the Zongzi tribe, Guhan and I Ching met a few people who were running for their lives like mad tigers. After I Ching identified them, they were all from the Zongzi tribe. After I Ching instructed them to flee to the Bayan tribe, he ran even faster. With the help of the sword lady's physique, I Ching's speed had already surpassed Usain Bolt's maximum speed. He kept on rushing and returned to his Zongzi tribe in about 10 minutes. But it was too late. The periphery of the Zongzi tribe was already littered with all kinds of corpses. Within the stronghold, the corpses were densely packed and everywhere. I Ching walked around the stronghold in a daze. He remembered all the names of the people in the entire tribe. Every time he saw a corpse, he would say the person's name and shake the gradually stiffening corpse, trying to wake them up from their slumber. Of course, it was a waste of effort. Yuan Ko killed people in a straightforward manner, just like how I Ching killed Yuan Ko in a straightforward manner. I Ching. Ching-er. Amidst the pile of corpses, I Ching suddenly heard a weak voice calling his name. Following the direction of the voice, he realized it was the tribal chief, I Yun. The oldest man in the tribe was still alive. He had lost an arm, and his face was pale from excessive blood loss. Although he was still alive, he did not have much longer to live. "Chief, chief." I Ching ran over and hugged the tribal chief. 2 drops of tears rolled down his cheeks. This was the first time Guhan saw the young heaven-covering Jiandi cry. "Child, I don't have time to hide anymore. I have something important to tell you. Listen up." Just like in all television dramas and novels, those heavily injured people would say a long list of last words before they died. Yun began to say a long list of last words. "From now on, I Ching, you will be the 15th generation tribal chief of the Zongzi tribe. From today onwards, even if you are alone, you must continue our Zongzi tribe. Promise me, can you?" "Yes, I promise you, tribal chief." I Ching nodded with tears in his eyes. "All right, I'll tell you again. Actually, I have hidden the Zongzi tribe's savings at XXXXX locations. There is wealth and food that we have accumulated over 100 years. It is enough for you to revive our Zongzi tribe." The first time I Yun met Guhan, he had said that the half a vat of flour was their remaining rations. He had tricked I Tian's food out of it. Who would have thought that they had 3 secret treasures? Upon careful thought, this was very normal. Without this cunning rabbit's wisdom, the Zongzi tribe would not have lasted for 200 years. There's one last thing. The tribal chief's last breath sure took a long time. After explaining 2 things, there was one last thing. "Actually, there's one thing I've been hiding from you." Cough cough. Yun spat out a mouthful of blood. "Your mother is not only your mother, she is also my daughter. I am actually your grandfather. Because of some reasons, I can't acknowledge you. I can only secretly take care of you. Please forgive this useless grandfather of mine." All right, it was beginning to develop into a family ethics drama. I know. I knew long ago. Without grandfather's care, I, I Ching, would have long died in the desert. I Ching nodded desperately. Actually, there's one more thing I've been hiding from you. Cough cough. Yun spat out another mouthful of blood. Your mother did not disappear. She was sucked into the demon palace. Yun said another piece of heavy news. Mother. Upon hearing the news of his mother, I Ching was somewhat excited. Grandfather, don't worry. I am now a sword wielder. I will definitely storm into the demon palace and find my mother. All right, now I can die in peace. Yun slowly closed his eyes in I Ching's embrace. 2 drops of hot tears rolled down I Ching's face, dripping onto Yun's face. Then, Yun's eternally closed eyes suddenly opened. Sorry, there's one more thing I forgot to say. Yun, who refused to say the last sentence, grabbed I Ching with one hand and extended his other hand towards Gohan. Lord Gohan, can I invite you over? Me? Although Gohan did not understand why the grandfather and granddaughter would ask him to come along, perhaps it was a requirement of the plot. Thinking silently, Gohan walked to Yun's side and grabbed Yun's skeleton-like hand. Lord Gohan, this old man has a presumptuous request. I hope Lord Gohan will not reject it. Yun looked at Gohan with eyes filled with hope. According to the normal progression of the plot, Gohan naturally would not reject the words of an elder who was about to die. Is our story going to go according to the normal plot? Of course it will. Gohan held Yun's hand tightly. Chieftain Yun, don't worry. As long as it's within Gohan's capabilities, Gohan will definitely do it. Next would be a new plot mission. Gohan guessed that the game's plot was always like this. Next would be a new plot mission for Gohan. Lord Gohan, don't worry. This matter, Lord Gohan will definitely be able to do it, Yun said with a smile. Lord Gohan, from today onwards, I will entrust I Ching to Lord Gohan. Chieftain Yun, don't worry. I Ching is like my disciple. I will definitely teach him well and make him a strong sword wielder. Gohan thought Yun was going to say something, but it turned out to be a cliché of entrusting an orphan. If not for the dungeon's plot, if not for the fact that I Ching was a young Jiandi, Gohan would not have agreed to take care of such a burden. He could not even take care of Qingpin. Wrong, wrong. Yun shook his head and kept saying wrong, wrong. Gohan did not understand. Wasn't Yun going to entrust him to take care of I Ching? Lord Gohan, I am not asking you to be I Ching's master. Cough. Yun continued to vomit blood. I hope that I Ching can become your wife. I Ching is now a sword wielder, so he should be worthy of Lord Gohan. What the hell? What the hell is this? What the hell? What the hell is this? The first what the hell was said by Gohan. Even with Gohan's calm personality, he was shocked. What situation was this? Wasn't I Ching a young man? Why was he marrying him? He was heaven-covering Jiandi. It was clearly written in countless history books that he was a man. He was a man. The second what the hell was said by Tian. She burst out of her scabbard and transformed into a sword maiden, appearing beside Gohan. From the looks of it, heaven-covering Jiandi's sword maiden did not know that her sword wielder was a woman. Grandfather, what did you say? I Ching's face blushed. What the hell, could it be that she was really a girl? Heh heh. Yun chuckled and with a tilt of his head, he died. This time, Yun was really dead. Gohan felt his pulse and he could not be more dead. Grandfather. While I Ching was hugging Yun and crying, Gohan pulled Tian to a place far enough away. What's the situation? Tian, answer me honestly. Is heaven-covering Jiandi really a girl? Gohan really could not believe that heaven-covering Jiandi was actually a girl. This was because not only was heaven-covering Jiandi a boy in all historical records, he was also a married man. He even had descendants living in this world. How would I know? I always thought he was a man. He always dressed as a man. He didn't look like a woman at all. Etion's expression was even weirder than Gohan's. She could not accept this fact. He always says he is a man on any occasion, but he is clearly a man. Then let me ask you, have you ever seen him naked? For example, when he is bathing. No. Can't you feel whether he has that thing in his body or not in his Zifu? No, the Purple Mansion does not have that function. Then when he sees a beauty, does his body have a lustful reaction? He never looks at beauties. Then what about his wife? Doesn't he have a wife? He even has a child. I don't know. After he became an Empyrean sword, he used green hair severed to remove the sword scars on me. This is why I hate him for life. Chapter 309. Gohan did not know if the fact that Jetion Jiendi was a woman, or if it was something that had truly happened in history, or if it was something that the dungeon had fabricated out of thin air. However, regardless of the truth, Gohan had to complete this dungeon. Gohan had a feeling that this dungeon might reveal a truth that he had never imagined. Gohan had to perfectly clear this dungeon. Husband. I Ching, who bade farewell to Iyun, slowly walked to Gohan's side. Her cherry lips spat out a word that Gohan found unbearable. Hearing the future Jetion Jiendi call him husband, Gohan felt goosebumps all over his body. As for Etion, who was standing behind Gohan, he was so frightened by I Ching calling him husband that he turned into a sword. It was as if Etion's entire worldview had been blown apart. Are you really a girl? Gohan asked in disbelief. I Ching nodded silently. In the desert, a lonely girl is the target of all men. I Ching has no parents to take care of her, so she can only pretend to be a boy. Apart from her grandfather, no one else knew about this. However, from today onwards, husband will be the second person to know I Ching's true gender. After saying that, I Ching's entire body exuded the aura of a gentle wife, causing Gohan's heart to sway. What kind of damned setting was this? How did that extraordinarily intelligent youth, I Ching, suddenly become a little wife? This change was a little too fast. I Ching might have a good impression of Gohan, but it was only a good impression. It was impossible for it to rise to the level of love. Therefore, I Ching's demeanor of a little wife was mostly an act. The reason for her acting was very simple. With I Ching's current strength as a sword-bearer, it was impossible for her to help the Zongzi tribe take revenge and kill off Yuan Ko. If I Ching wanted to take revenge, he could only rely on Gohan's power. What could be more justified than taking revenge for his wife? The reason why Iyun entrusted I Ching to Gohan before his death was probably because of this. I Ching, stop acting. I know what you're thinking. I promise you, I will avenge the Zongzi tribe. I hope that you can live according to your heart and not carry these inexplicable things. Gohan said seriously. At this time, Gohan had two choices. One was to go along with I Ching's performance and continue acting as a married couple. The second was to expose I Ching's performance just like what Gohan had said just now and let everything return to reality. Gohan finally chose the second option because he knew that no matter how real the acting was, it was just a play. It might be useful for a naive and sweet person, but for an empress like I Ching, it was more appropriate to maintain a sense of sincerity. Hearing Gohan's words, I Ching didn't say anything else. She lowered her head and pondered for a while, then suddenly knelt in front of Gohan and kowtowed 3 times. With a sad expression, she spat out a word of thanks. When I Ching kowtowed, Gohan did not stop her. Instead, he stood there quietly and accepted I Ching's 3 kowtows. Then, Gohan helped I Ching up, the young heaven-shrouding sword emperor, and said gently, I have received 3 kowtows from you. In this life, I will definitely help you climb mountains of blades and seas of fire to take revenge. Don't worry. Understood. I Ching's expression gradually turned cold. Who knew what she understood? Looking at the wounds of the dead and injured, they were all killed by bullets and shrapnel. It seems like these Yuan Ko are the same as the ones we encountered in the Taowu tribe. They are all the work of an army of Yuan Ko. Gohan examined the wounds of all the corpses and came to this conclusion. When we arrived, the corpses and blood were constantly flowing out. This means that the time when these Yuan Ko finished the massacre was not far from when we returned. It is very likely that they left 2 to 3 minutes ago. But after we arrived here, we did not even see a single Yuan Ko. These Yuan Ko should have a means of transportation that can move quickly. I Ching followed behind Gohan and analyzed the situation. The means of transportation for the army are often things like cars. Trucks are not like Yuan Ko, which can hide in dimensional rifts and will not leave traces on the desert. If it was a truck, there would definitely be traces. The two of them quickly investigated the surroundings of the stronghold and indeed found shallow tire track. They estimated that in a few minutes, these tracks would be covered by the sandstorm. Let's chase after them. Wait, I Ching. Don't you want to bury your clansmen's corpses first? Gohan reminded I Ching. There's no need. People in the desert will naturally be buried by the sandstorm. This is the will of the heavens. I Ching's words were filled with a deep coldness. Regardless of gender, this originally bright and intelligent young man was gradually becoming the cold and emotionless heaven-shrouding sword emperor of the future. The will of the heavens? Gohan sighed inwardly when he heard I Ching's words. I Ching, do you know that in the future, you will fight your way to the heavenly courts and overturn the entire Eastern immortal world? The will of the heavens is probably nothing to you. Gohan and I Ching chased after the intermittent tire tracks as they advanced. Along the way, Gohan and I Ching passed by 3 or 4 oases. These oases were where human tribes gathered. Just like the Zongzi tribe, these pitiful tribes were all turned into dead zones by Yuan Ko's massacre. The yellow sand that filled the sky was dyed bright red by the blood of these dead people. These Yuan Ko, they are here to exterminate us humans. I Ching clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth. The Suzhou desert was not large. It was less than the size of a county. There were only 7 or 8 oases in total. Less than 10 tribes. At this time, the number of tribes that had been exterminated by Yuan Ko had reached 5. This was equivalent to half of the desert's population dying in this calamity. Finally, after passing by the 5th tribe that had been exterminated, Gohan and I Ching finally followed the group of Yuan Ko's nest. It was a location close to the old Suzhou city ruins, at the edge of the desert. Hundreds of military tents were set up on the yellow sand, forming a small military camp. At the same time, hundreds of Yuan Ko's troops were reorganizing in the camp. These Yuan Kos were the same as the Yuan Kos that had been massacred in the Taowu tribe. They all looked like female high school students and held Mauser 98 rifles in their hand. Looking at their readied appearance, it seemed that they were ready to set off again to attack the next tribe. It's them, they're the ones who killed them all. I Ching's voice was a little muffled. Due to his excitement, I Ching's voice was trembling uncontrollably. These female high school students were the Yuan Kos that had exterminated the entire Zongzi tribe. When I Ching saw them, his entire body was trembling with excitement. Just like Gohan, an unforgettable hatred filled every corner of I Ching's body. I understand now. They're going to complete the mission that the group we killed didn't complete. They're going to kill all the remaining tribes. At this time, the troops had already boarded the military trucks and began to leave the camp, heading towards their new target. I Ching was familiar with the situation in the entire desert. Looking at the direction of the convoy, she knew that they were going to the oasis where the Taowu tribe was located and launch a new attack on the Taowu tribe. That was why she said that. So that's how it is. It seems that they originally planned to annihilate all the tribes from 2 directions at the same time. However, we've already eliminated one of the teams, so the remaining team must take over that team's mission and kill all the remaining tribes. Originally, Yuan Ko's killing and annihilation plan was flawless. Unfortunately, they encountered Gohan and lost almost a company of troops for no reason. The battle plan is very simple. We'll kill this suicidal troop first, then destroy the entire camp. Gohan completed the entire battle plan without hesitation. Because Gohan's combat strength completely crushed the opponent, the entire battle plan did not require any strategy. It was just a simple charge and kill. However, this plan was exactly what I Ching liked. She couldn't wait to kill these executioners who had exterminated her tribe with her own hand. Sir Military Governor, can you not attack first? I Ching hugged Gohan's arm and said coldly, I like to use my own strength to avenge my tribe, instead of relying on your strength, Sir Gohan. Sure. Gohan did not refuse. Previously, he killed all the female high school Yuan Ko soldiers to ensure that everyone died in I Ching's hands. It was also to complete the dungeon's rating requirement. Now that they had entered the hidden quest, the rating requirement and the SS rating were no longer important. What was important was I Ching. Gohan had to take care of I Ching's emotions. Moreover, Gohan was extremely interested in I Ching's strength. This was one of the strongest Gyendi in history. How strong was her combat talent? This was what Gohan was most interested in. I Ching and Bai Tai, who were filled with hatred, were lying in ambush on the path that the convoy must pass through. Gohan was not far from I Ching, always paying attention to I Ching's personal shield. He did not want I Ching to die under the siege of these Yuan Ko soldiers. According to Gohan's original intention, he wanted to stay by I Ching's side and watch over her so that he could save I Ching immediately. However, I Ching refused. Gohan expressed his understanding and support of her desire to take revenge alone. In any case, no matter how far away they were, a single strand of sword chi would be enough to ensure I Ching's safety. So, Gohan watched from afar as the future Gyendi performed in battle for the first time in her life. It was a magnificent performance. Chapter 310. From Gohan's point of view, I Ching was a little careless at the beginning of the operation. When the first vehicle arrived at I Ching's ambush spot, Bai Tai, who was dressed in white, could not wait to jump out and slash at the military truck's wheel. According to the plan that Gohan had given I Ching, Bai Tai was supposed to find a way to paralyze one of the vehicles and block the movement of the vehicles behind it, causing a series of collisions. In this way, the Yuan Ko, who were confused by the accident, could not form a battle formation immediately. This gave Bai Tai a chance to turn the whole battle into a chaotic battle. However, I Ching's slash did not stop the first vehicle. The wheel that was attacked was still on the truck's axle, but the tire had been slashed. As a result, the series of collisions that Gohan had hoped for did not happen. All the vehicles stopped safely, and then the female soldiers jumped out of the vehicles one after another. They began to form a formation spontaneously and started shooting at the bold Bai Tai. If the soldiers were to form a formation, Bai Tai would definitely be shot at the same time. With her ancient sword shield, it would not take long for it to break. It could be said that the beginning of the battle was not smooth. Soon, Gohan saw I Ching's flexible fighting style. When I Ching noticed that the Yuan Ko had begun to form a formation, she immediately ordered Bai Tai to rush to a truck beside her. At this time, there were 5 or 6 female high school students in the truck. Among them, Yuan Ko did not get out. When they saw Bai Tai get in the truck, they immediately picked up their rifles and started shooting at her. Because the shooting distance was very close, Bai Tai took 3 bullets at once. However, the extremely slow firing rate of the Mauser 98 meant that the Yuan Ko could not form an effective net of fire on Bai Tai. Bai Tai easily approached a female high school student soldier. Instead of attacking the female high school student soldier, Bai Tai's sword slashed at the gun in her hand. Smart! Gohan exclaimed. With Bai Tai's ancient sword level, even if I Ching's innate sword element was more than 3,000 points, it would still take about 3 slashes to kill a mouse-level Yuan Ko. However, the guns in their hands could not withstand 3 slashes from Bai Tai. With just 1 slash, the gun in Yuan Ko's hand was directly cut in half. With this method, Bai Tai quickly removed the offensive ability of the Yuan Ko. Without weapons, the female high school students were just simple high school students. They were easily killed by Bai Tai on the truck. However, at the same time that the hunters on the truck were killed, the female high school hunters on the other vehicles had also completed their formation. They began to fire at Bai Tai Jian on the back of the truck. Bai Tai Jian took no less than 20 bullets in an instant. Although the bullets bounced off Bai Tiejian's steel membrane shield, a small crack appeared on the shield. After a dozen more volleys of attacks, Bai Tiejian's personal shield would be destroyed. "Come back, Bai Tai!" At this time, I Ching suddenly jumped up from the sand. With a command, Bai Tai turned into a ray of light and flew back to I Ching's hand, turning back into the shape of a sword. The female high school students, Yuan Ko, who had been aiming at Bai Tai, suddenly lost their target. They seemed to be at a loss of what to do. Taking advantage of this opportunity, I Ching jumped onto the boarding pedal outside the driver's cab. Standing on the pedal, he chopped down the driver's door with his sword. When the driver of the truck was caught off guard, I Ching accurately stabbed his sword into her heart. According to the rules of the game, stabbing the heart or the temple had a high chance of causing fatal damage to the Yuan Ko. I Ching's extremely high innate sword essence, coupled with the multiplier of fatal damage, caused the female high school student driver to roll her eyes and fall from her seat. She dragged I Ching to the ground and died. At this time, the rest of the female high school student assault team realized that the enemy had already climbed into their truck. When they started to shoot at the driver's seat, I Ching had already stepped on the accelerator. He drove the truck around nimbly and rushed toward the assault team's formation. What the hell, when did I Ching learn to drive? Seeing I Ching driving the flying truck, Gohan was shocked once again. I Ching, a child from the desert, shouldn't have had the chance to come into contact with a truck. Even if there were truck wreckages left behind from the apocalypse in the desert, they were just wreckages. There was no way they could be started again. Where did I Ching learn to drive? And he was driving a large vehicle like a truck. Could this be Jiandi's main character halo? Whether it was the protagonist's halo or not, under I Ching's driving, the truck directly rushed into the female assault team's formation, smashing their formation into pieces. This was the best time for I Ching to make her move. I Ching acutely grasped this crucial moment. The moment the truck rushed into the formation, I Ching did a beautiful somersault from the driver's seat and landed in the most important position in the formation. She climbed up and stabbed with her sword. The white iron sword in her hand accurately pierced the heart of a female high school student, instantly killing this Yuan Ko. The chaos brought about by the truck was temporary, but the chaos brought about by I Ching entering the Yuan Ko formation and slashing crazily was continuous. Faced with the Yuan Ko soldiers who had barged into their formation, the soldiers were somewhat at a loss. This was because they realized that there was a high chance that their shots would hurt their own people. For a moment, all the gunshots stopped, and all the female high school student soldiers were at a loss. The Yuan Ko soldiers were at a loss, but that didn't mean I Ching was at a loss. This was the best opportunity for her to kill the enemy. The white iron sword in her hand was like a nimble and tricky little snake, always accurately piercing the opponent's heart. In just a few seconds, 6 female high school students died under I Ching's sword because their hearts were pierced through. That accuracy! Seeing I Ching consecutively piercing the heart of Yuan Ko 6 times, killing it in one hit, Gohan couldn't help but sigh. Although I Ching's swordsmanship was full of mistakes and was full of flaws, he was a complete newbie. If Gohan were to fight with her, Gohan was confident that he could knock the white iron sword out of I Ching's hands in one move. But I Ching's sword accuracy and ruthlessness shocked Gohan. She did not hesitate in every strike, and her sword was sent into the opponent's heart at the most appropriate time. It didn't even need to think to know that to consecutively pierce the heart of a moving enemy 6 times, it required terrifying accuracy. Gohan before the age of 15 couldn't guarantee that he could do this. At that time, Gohan had already practiced swordsmanship for 8 years. This is a talent that only the top sword masters have. With a little guidance, I Ching will become a terrifying sword master. Just based on this heart-piercing technique, I Ching could become a sword master. If I teach her the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, I'm afraid that in less than 3 years, I won't be a match for I Ching. Gohan compared himself with I Ching again, and couldn't help but come to a somewhat pessimistic conclusion. His 12 years of swordsmanship couldn't compare to I Ching's 3 years of swordsmanship. After all, I Ching was the future Gendi, and also one of the strongest Gendi in history, so it was natural that she had such talent. Their attention shifted from Gohan to the battlefield. At this time, all the Yuan Ko soldiers reacted. If they didn't shoot, they could only let the opponent kill them. Their eyes turned red. Regardless of whether it was the soldiers in the distance or close by, they all started to fire wildly at I Ching without caring about their teammate. Dang 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 dang. God knew how many bullets hit I Ching's body. I Ching's attack technique was not bad, and every move was fatal. However, her ability to dodge the bullets was not good, or she simply did not dodge at all. She could only let the bullets hit her body, and cracks kept increasing on her personal shield. Probably because she estimated that her personal shield would not last much longer, I Ching's movements became faster and faster. It seemed that she planned to get rid of all her opponents before her personal shield broke. As I Ching's attack speed became faster, more and more female Yuan Ko students were pierced in the heart by I Ching. One by one, they fell at I Ching's feet. Among the fallen Yuan Ko, there was a female high school student who was particularly miserable. After I Ching's white iron sword pierced her heart, it even spun around and stirred her heart into a mass of meat paste. There was another female high school student. Perhaps it was because her OP was very big, and her cup was probably more than an F cup. For a moment, I Ching did not pierce through her chest. The blade of the sword was stuck in a thick, soft mass of flesh. I Ching had to expend a lot of effort to pull out the white iron sword and stab it with her sword before it pierced through her heart. This was the only Yuan Ko that I Ching had to use 2 sword strikes to kill. It was said that I Ching was very unhappy with women with cup larger than an F cup. Of course, this was just a rumor. The most miserable one was another female high school student. Her OP was the same as the previous one, and it was an F cup. In the end, I Ching changed the tradition of piercing the heart with 1 sword. First, she cut from the side, and the entire OP on the right side was cut off. A large piece of beautiful flesh with bright red blood fell to the ground. Without the obstruction of the fat, I Ching was satisfied and stabbed the sword into the wound that was cut off, sending the unlucky Yuan Ko on his way. The whole battle was so bloody that it had reached the level of Forbidden 98. What was Forbidden 98? It was forbidden for those below the age of 98 to watch. As for those above the age of 98, they had to ensure that they could live past that age first. I Ching's killing speed was extremely fast. Over 100 Yuan Kos were soon killed by I Ching, and there were less than 10 Yuan Kos left. It looked like I Ching was about to completely annihilate all of the Yuan Kos. However, at that moment, I Ching's personal shield was also on the verge of shattering. As a bullet hit her body, the entire personal shield shattered, and I Ching's body was completely exposed to Yuan Ko's bullet. Without the personal shield's protection, as long as a bullet hit a vital part, I Ching would be sent to heaven. Sigh, it's time for me to make my move. Finally, it was time for Gohan, who had been watching the show for a long time, to make his move. Gohan held onto the heavenly sword and prepared to send a sword beam over to save I Ching from the threat of the bullets. She had already killed over 90% of her enemies. She must be satisfied. Gohan's attack speed was very fast. A sword beam was sent out, heading towards the remaining Yuan-Kos. It seemed as though the Yuan-Kos were about to die to his sword beam. At the same time, I Ching, whose personal shield had been shattered, suddenly roared out madly. As she spoke, she slashed out with her white iron sword, and a sword beam that was much smaller than Gohan's sword beam shot out. As I Ching was much closer to the remaining Yuan-Kos than Gohan's sword beam, even though I Ching's sword beam was released slightly later, it still managed to slash the remaining Yuan-Kos before Gohan's sword beam arrived, cutting the Yuan-Kos in half. Is she still a human? Gohan was shocked. Gohan, who had always thought that his talent was unparalleled in the world, was shocked by another person's talent for the first time. She actually used her own strength to comprehend and use sword beam in the first battle of her life at the ancient sword rank. Is she still a human? I Ching was not a human. She was the emperor of sword-bearers, heaven-shrouding Jindy. Chapter 3:11. After killing all the murderers of the Zongzi tribe and returning to Gohan's side, I Ching's face that was full of hatred had already calmed down. At least, ordinary people would not be able to see any unforgettable hatred on I Ching's face. Thank you, Sir Military Governor. For your kindness, I Ching will never. I Ching was halfway through his sentence when his eyes rolled back. He seemed to have lost his support and was about to fall to the ground. Fortunately, Gohan's eyes and hands were quick. He caught I Ching in his arms, preventing I Ching from falling onto the sand dune. You're too tired. The battle just now has already exhausted all of your strength. Touching I Ching's body, even his bones were soft. This meant that I Ching's physical strength was almost at its limit, especially the last sword aura. After Gohan released the sword aura for the first time, his body was also sore for a few days before he recovered. The human body was indeed fragile. It's all right, Sir Military Governor. I Ching blushed in Gohan's arms. Sir Military Governor, let's continue to attack the last barracks. Only by completely annihilating this group of Yuan-Ko, I Ching can comfort the souls of my tribe in heaven. No, your physical strength has not recovered yet. You can't go up and fight now. I won't allow you to go up and die like this. All right, then I Ching will rest for a while. I Ching nodded shyly. Here, drink this. When you feel like your body has been emptied, drink this is the last thing you need. Gohan passed a bottle of Laozhan white flower snake grass water to I Ching. He was not sure if everyone still remembered this thing. It was a good thing that could greatly recover the energy of a sword wielder. It was a godly item that every sword wielder had in their dimensional pocket. Thank you. I Ching took the drink shyly, then looked at the mouth of the bottle. A small sip, a small sip. What's wrong? Does it not taste good? Seeing I Ching taking small sips, Gohan asked with concern. No, it's delicious. It's so good. I Ching said with tears in his eyes. Drink more if you like it. All right, Gohan didn't say that out loud. It was the author's imagination. At this moment, Gohan and I Ching were treating each other respectfully. On the other side, someone's heart was about to overflow with jealousy. Adulterous couple. Someone muttered in a low voice. What? King of Chu, what did you say just now? Gohan's hearing was not just for show. Oh, Benwang is saying that it's really good. The military governor has won the heart of another beauty. The king of Yu said sourly. This guy, the pH in his mouth should be less than 3 points, right? Even dilute sulfuric acid was only SOSO. However, since Prince Yu mentioned a beauty, taking a closer look, I Ching was at most a delicate tomboy. She was even worse than Brother Chun. Calling her beautiful was really praising her. Especially her chest. Logically speaking, if I Ching's breasts were slightly undulating, Gohan wouldn't treat her as a young man. Although the taste of the Laozhan white flower snake grass water was debatable, it had a great effect on the recovery of the wielder's body and energy. I Ching drank a bottle and her condition was much better. Taking this opportunity, Gohan asked I Ching a few questions that he was very concerned about. Where did you learn this sword technique of stabbing the heart? Gohan was quite curious about I Ching's technique of stabbing the heart 100 times. Even if it was Gohan, he would have to practice for more than 3 years to be able to do this. Didn't military governor teach I Ching this? I Ching raised her head in confusion and looked at Gohan doubtfully. When did I? Gohan wanted to deny it subconsciously, but he immediately reacted. Oh right, I Ching had stabbed the heart under his command to finish off the 100 over Yuan Ko. Could this be the teaching that I Ching spoke of? She was able to reach this level with just this little bit of practice? If military governor didn't let I Ching practice the finishing off technique, I Ching wouldn't be able to be so proficient. This is all thanks to military governor. I Ching must thank military governor. I Ching's words confirmed Gohan's guess. Damn, he didn't think that I Ching would actually be able to master the skill of stabbing the heart with just this little bit of practice. So Zhetian learned the heart-piercing sword technique from this. Inside the Purple Palace, I Tian suddenly said this through the sword mark. You, I Tian, what heart-piercing sword technique are you talking about? Gohan immediately asked. You don't know? When Zhetian Jiendi killed Yuan Ko, whether it was the human Yuan Ko, the beast Yuan Ko, or some other strange Yuan Ko, as long as they had hearts, then Zhetian would definitely kill them by piercing their hearts. Of course, that wasn't necessarily the case. There were some Yuan Dawn that didn't have hearts, or Yuan Dawn that wouldn't die even if their hearts were destroyed. Zhetian wouldn't do that. Later on, everyone said that Zhetian learned some heart-piercing sword technique, but I Ching never admitted this. After listening to I Tian's narration, Gohan was speechless. The heroic and invincible image of Zhetian Jiendi that could be clearly seen in history books had been completely overturned. Gohan suddenly had a strong interest in the real Zhetian Jiendi in history. He urgently wanted to know what happened behind the scenes of Zhetian Jiendi. That was because Gohan had a feeling that all of this had something to do with his clan. About 30 minutes later, with the help of the Laozhan White Flower Snake Grass Water, I Ching's physical strength and energy had almost recovered. Gohan decided to officially start the attack mission on the last Yuan Ko camp. After eliminating 2 waves of female high school commandos, there were about 50 female high school commandos left in the camp. In addition, there were 5 tanks, 2 IFVs, dozens of machine guns, and a helicopter. Their combined combat power far exceeded the German female high school commandos of more than 100 people. What made Gohan feel strange was that these Yuan Ko clearly had such a strong combat power left, but they didn't care about the death of their comrades. Not only did they not come out to support I Ching when he was fighting with the other side. Even though 30 minutes had passed, they still didn't seem to know that the troops they sent out had been completely wiped out, and they just firmly guarded the camp. In this regard, Gohan had 2 guesses. Either these Yuan Ko had all lost their minds and there was no one to command them, so they didn't care about the death of their companions. Or, there was something important hidden in the camp, and the remaining Yuan Ko had to firmly guard these things, so they would never leave the camp. No matter which guess it was, Gohan had to kill his way into the camp to find out the truth. When the attack officially started, I Ching still wanted to be the first to rush into the camp, but she was stopped by Gohan. Gohan warned I Ching not to think that she was invincible just because she single-handedly defeated an entire team. The firepower of this camp was much more terrifying than that of the previous team. Gohan ordered I Ching to protect his flank, and the main battle would still be completed by Gohan himself. Although I Ching didn't agree with this, she soon understood how correct Gohan's decision was. When Gohan began to rush into the camp to defend, dozens of machine guns simultaneously aimed at Gohan and opened fire. The crazy rate of fire was even more terrifying than 1,000 soldiers firing at the same time. I Ching estimated that Gohan would be hit by at least 50 bullets per second. How could I Ching's personal shield withstand such terrifying damage? In the face of such an attack, I Ching's personal shield would shatter in less than 7 seconds, and then she would be shot to death. Even Gohan himself, the energy of his personal shield was also decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. If he continued to be shot by these machine guns, Gohan's personal shield would only last for a minute at most. Fortunately, Gohan only needed to hold on for less than 10 seconds. In 10 seconds, Gohan jumped to a position less than 200 meters away from the machine guns. This distance was within the range where Gohan's sword chi could hit. Yu Wangjian flung out 6 sword chis, and with lightning speed, the machine guns in the camp were turned into mush. The female high school students operating the machine guns were also turned into a bloody paste. Without the machine guns in the way, the remaining tanks and armored vehicles were a piece of cake. Gohan first sent a sword chi slashing at the tank's armor. Compared to Japan's Little Bean tank, the armor of the so-called Tiger tank was clearly stronger. Gohan's sword chi didn't penetrate the armor directly, and only left a 20 mm thick sword mark on the armor. Looks like these tanks are at least soul-grade Yuan Ko. Gohan didn't have the time to check the information on his personal terminal. He just silently estimated the level of these tanks. A mere soul-grade Yuan Ko was like a bunch of colored pencils in front of Gohan. Under I Ching's admiring gaze, Gohan completed the process of slaughter that was like a beautiful dance. He lightly tapped on the tank's hatch cover, and the hatch cover was sent flying. Then, 3 sword chis were sent into the tank, and the entire tank, along with the female high school students inside, were all turned into a pile of meat paste. The armored vehicles were easier to deal with. He just needed to tear open the weakest part of the armored vehicle's armor and charge in, killing all the Yuan Ko inside. Finally, there was a helicopter flying in the sky that kept firing air-to-ground missiles and machine guns at Gohan. Gohan used a precise sword chi to cut off the tail of the helicopter's propeller. Then, the helicopter fell down. There was no need for Gohan to do anything. Yuan Ko and the helicopter were both smashed into meat paste. The entire battle did not take more than 2 minutes. Gohan had completely suppressed the entire camp. I Ching was intoxicated by the sight. Such a powerful expert was a man worthy of her, I Ching. In the center of the camp there was a huge tent that was guarded by the camp's last military force, 3 rat tanks and a group of soldiers with machine guns. However, no matter how good the defense was, it was useless. Gohan easily got rid of them. From the tight security, this tent is probably the reason why these Yuan Ko appeared in the desert. Gohan said indifferently. I Ching's expression was hesitant and curious. Could it be that the reason for the tribe's destruction was because of the things in this tent? There was nothing much to say. Gohan and I Ching walked into this huge tent. There was nothing in the entire tent except for a pitch-black mirror-like crack that was floating in the void. This is a dimensional rift. Gohan immediately recognized that this was the reason why Yuan Ko was brought to this world. A dimensional rift. I have heard of this name before. The old man said that all the Yuan Ko emerged from a dimensional rift. I Ching stared at this rift. This was the first time she saw a dimensional rift that brought destruction to the human race. Strange, why are these Yuan Ko guarding this dimensional rift? I Ching asked in puzzlement. Very simple. Since ancient times, there is only one reason why Yuan Ko would guard a dimensional rift and kill all the humans around it. Gohan paused for a moment. This means that a universe-class Yuan Ko or above is coming to our world. Universe-class Yuan Ko? I Ching was not a legitimate swordsman and had never received swordsman education. She basically had no concept of a universe-class Yuan Ko. Is a universe-class Yuan Ko very powerful? Lord Military Governor, can you defeat them? Fight! Gohan smiled bitterly. I'm afraid we have to escape. Just as Gohan uttered the word escape, the dimensional rift suddenly blossomed with a pitch-black radiance. Shortly after, A golden-haired young lady clad in pitch-black armor slowly walked out of the dimensional rift. "It's you." Gohan was stunned. System notification. Mission updated. Mission 4 completed. The reason for Yuan Ko's appearance has been investigated. Universe Class Yuan Ko Artoria Black has appeared in this world. System notification. Mission 5. Escape, escape. Use all your strength and methods to escape to a safe place. Chapter 312. Let's run. Gohan's decision could not be said to be slow. Since the mission's name was Run, why didn't Gohan escape? However, Gohan looked at Artoria with some unwillingness in his eyes. It was not easy to see her again. It would be great if they could sit down and have a cup of tea. With this thought, Gohan could not help but look at Artoria again. As a result, Gohan was shocked to find that the moment Black Artoria left the dimensional rift, she fell to the ground. Her body was full of wounds, and black, mud-like blood kept flowing out of the wounds. This powerful Eternity Yuan Ko seemed to have been seriously injured before entering the dimensional rift. She seemed to have also escaped into the dimensional rift. System prompt. Artoria has fallen into a coma. She will wake up in 2 minutes and start hunting you and I Ching. Please start escaping quickly. Please start escaping quickly. 1 minute 59 seconds left. 1 minute 58 seconds left. I Ching, let's run. A trace of regret flashed between Gohan's brows. He did not expect to have the opportunity to meet here. It was a pity that the first thing they did was to escape. There were still a few hundred years before Artoria's betrayal. The current Artoria was a full-fledged Yuan Ko, a ruthless Yuan Ko who killed humans. However, when Gohan held I Ching's hand and was about to escape with her, I Ching suddenly shook off Gohan's hand. "Lord Military Governor, we can't escape now." I Ching's expression was very calm. She stared at the unconscious Black Artoria on the ground. Speaking of which, it was interesting. This was the first time Gohan met Artoria in the 2-instance dungeons, and she was unconscious both times. "Lord Military Governor, since we can't resist the Eternity Yuan Ko, it is meaningless for us to escape. When she wakes up, it will be our doomsday." I Ching drew her white iron sword and pointed the blade at Artoria's heart. "Lord Military Governor, why don't we kill her while she's unconscious? That way we will have a chance of survival." "Kill her! Kill Artoria!" Gohan was shocked. Even if Artoria was a full-fledged Yuan Ko, Gohan did not have the thought of killing Artoria. In Gohan's opinion, the best way was to follow the dungeon mission's instructions and escape with all their might. The constant countdown from the system seemed to confirm this point. This was a very common escape mission in the game. As long as they escaped to a certain location within the time limit, this mission would be completed. But this was the thinking of the average player. A person with a high IQ like Gohan would, of course, interpret this mission from a different perspective. Thinking about it carefully, killing Artoria might be the way to victory. Just like I Ching said, this time, Gohan could not find a nuclear bomb to send him to escape. Faced with the pursuit of the awakened Artoria, Gohan and I Ching refused to escape. Even if they used cheats, the difference in strength between them and Artoria was too great. That was why the system gave Gohan a heavily injured Artoria. The goal was to make the players think in reverse, that the only way to win was to kill Artoria. If they really listened to the system's instructions and escaped, it would be a dead end. "You're right, I've lost my mind." After calming down, Gohan spent 10 seconds thinking about the entire mission 3 times. He had to admit that I Ching's words made sense. In the face of Artoria's pursuit, running for one's life was the real path to death. This was a trap designed by the system, a trap of reverse thinking. Gohan was very sure of this. "Then kill her," I Ching said. Before Gohan could stop her, she stabbed her sword into Black Artoria's heart. She was very skilled, but she could not even pierce through the layer of black armor outside Artoria's body. She was sent flying by a counterforce, and Gohan grabbed her from behind. Hey! Artoria is an Ian rank Yuan Ko, so her armor is naturally Ian rank. Your sword mistress is only an ancient sword mistress. You can't break through the defense of Artoria's armor. Moving the embarrassed I Ching out of his arms, Gohan shook his head and quickly explained the classification of Yuan Ko's levels to I Ching. Stand back, let me kill her. After all, it was just a game. Gohan was not the kind of person who would waste time on an insignificant problem. Sir Military Governor, your sword mistress can pierce through the defense of Ian rank armor? After Gohan crammed some knowledge about Yuan Ko's level, I Ching already knew how terrifying an Ian rank Yuan Ko was. If Gohan's sword mistress could actually pierce through the defense of Ian rank armor, then Gohan should be at least a spirit sword rank swordsman, one level lower than immortal sword rank. I Ching judged in his heart, and his guess about Gohan's strength rose by a notch. After becoming a swordsman, I Ching had always judged Gohan's strength based on his own strength. It was just like how women always liked to guess how much their boyfriend loved them, and then whether this degree of love was greater than how much they loved him. It was a bit of a tongue twister, but he couldn't understand it, so he didn't care. At first, I Ching thought that Gohan was only a little stronger than him, but after seeing Gohan slaughter the German female high school commando team, I Ching felt that Gohan's strength should be 5 times his own. When he saw Gohan slaughter the camp's Yuan Ko, I Ching secretly increased it from 5 times to 10 times. Now, I Ching felt that Gohan might even be 500 times his own, if Gohan could really pierce through the defense of Ian rank armor. Yes, if I can completely unleash the power of Yu King Gojian. Yu King Gojian was one of the top 20 sword maidens, and if he used his full strength, it was not impossible to pierce through Ian rank Yuan Ko's armor. But this would require the support of a large amount of sword essence. According to Gohan's estimate, without 500,000 or 600,000 sword essence, it would be impossible to pierce through Artoria's armor with the power of Yu King Gojian. Then can Lord Military Governor fully unleash the power of Yu King Gojian? I Ching asked. No. Gohan's answer was very straightforward. His sword element was less than 5,000 quarks, which was 100 times away from the standard 500,000 quark. Then Lord Military Governor, how are you going to break this armor? I Ching asked dumbly. Why should I break her armor? Gohan glanced at I Ching. Her neck isn't protected by armor, so I can just chop off her neck. Hearing Gohan's words, I Ching suddenly felt like a super idiot. He was so stupid that he could die. You're just a string of data, Gohan silently said to himself. Without hesitation, he swung the Yu King Gojian at Artoria's neck. Now it was Gohan's turn to be embarrassed. Artoria's armor could actually sense Gohan's movements. Before the Yu King Gojian touched Artoria's neck, it automatically extended and transformed to protect her neck. Gohan, who had mustered all his strength to end the battle, was sent flying back by the rebounding force just like I Ching. His back was also hugged by I Ching. However, Gohan used much more strength than I Ching, and I Ching's body was far weaker than Gohan's. So, the moment I Ching hugged Gohan, she was knocked to the ground by the huge rebounding force. Gohan's entire body was on top of I Ching. As mentioned before, I Ching's clothes were wrapped in rags, so the quality was naturally very poor. With a tug from Gohan, the clothes were torn into pieces. Most of I Ching's upper body was exposed, including her breasts, to Gohan's eyes. Unfortunately, I Ching's chest did not have any beautiful scenery to speak of, because I Ching's épée did not even have any rise or fall. It was not even as big as Gohan's. No wonder Gohan could not recognize that I Ching was a girl. It was not Gohan's fault that his eyes were not good. System notification. 1 minute left until Artoria wakes up. 59 seconds left. Half of the time had passed. There was only 1 minute left. Gohan could not waste precious time on these matters between men and women. Gohan calmly climbed up from I Ching's body and took out a change of shirt from his dimensional pocket. He handed it to I Ching. Put it on. Don't catch a cold. Okay. I Ching also calmly put on the clothes as if she did not care about her exposed body. It seemed that these two would not only become Gyendi in the future, but also Best Actor. What do we do now? We can't do anything to Artoria's armor. It took I Ching less than a second to put on the clothes. Why don't we run away? It's too late. She will wake up in 1 minute. I'm afraid we won't even be able to leave this camp. Gohan shook his head. Hearing Gohan's words, I Ching was confused. How did Gohan know that she would wake up in 1 minute? Did someone whisper into Gohan's ear that Artoria would wake up in 1 minute? 55 seconds left. 54 seconds left. The system's voice continued to ring in Gohan's ear. It told Gohan that time was of the essence, and he had to make a decision quickly. I know. Gohan's eyes flashed with surprise. I know how to deal with this armor. What is it? I Ching asked hurriedly. It's simple. Just take off this armor. Gohan's voice was like a heavy bell in the middle of the night, exploding in I Ching's ears. This was a method that only a wise person could think of. That's right. Since I can't pierce through this armor, I can just take it off. Chapter 313. Although Artoria Black's armor was very tight and sturdy, it didn't mean that she couldn't take it off. Otherwise, how could Artoria Black get up there? If she wore it, she could take it off. Thinking about it, this seemed to be the second time Gohan had taken off Artoria's clothes. The first time was on the Raider off-road vehicle, and this time it was in the vast desert. With Gohan's skillful hands, Artoria's armor was smoothly taken off. He originally thought that Artoria would be wearing a small shirt under the armor, but he never expected that Artoria Black's armor would be completely bare. Once the armor was taken off, the thousands of sceneries inside were exposed. Pervert Gohan, stinking pervert. Pervert Gohan, stinking pervert. Pervert military governor, stinking pervert. At the same time, 3 similar voices entered Gohan's ears. They were I Tian, Yu Wang, and I Ching's voices. Seeing Gohan strip Artoria, all the women present condemned Gohan in unison. Gohan didn't care about it. You can say whatever you want, I won't lose a piece of flesh. Seeing Artoria's naked body for the second time, Gohan was still restless. The sword aura of the 3 green lotus swords kept surging out, attacking Gohan's nerves, trying to turn Gohan into a wolf on the spot and F***ck Artoria. Compared to the last time he saw Artoria's naked body, the situation was getting worse and worse. The first time, Gohan's little brother didn't listen to his command, but this time, Gohan was about to turn into a wolf and F***ck Artoria. I Ching watched calmly as Gohan groped Artoria's body. Her expression was very calm, especially when she saw Artoria's breasts that were a few cup sizes bigger than hers. She appeared especially calm. I'm just malnourished, I Ching suddenly said to herself. Unfortunately, this was not convincing. System notification. 5 seconds left until Artoria wakes up. 4 seconds left. It took a lot of time to take off that armor, and it took a lot of time to overcome his desire to turn into a wolf. There was no more time for Gohan to waste. He had to kill Artoria decisively. Gohan was never an indecisive person, so he pulled out his Yu King Gojian sword and closed his eyes. The blade of the Yu King Gojian sword pierced through Artoria's chest and through her heart. To be safe, Gohan released 10 rays of sword aura into Artoria's body. With these 10 rays of sword aura wreaking havoc in the weakest parts of her body, even the desolation level Yuan Ko would be half dead. She should be dead now. The Yu King Gojian sword was still in Artoria's body. At this time, Gohan felt a deep sense of sorrow for himself. When Gohan stabbed Artoria's heart, the system's continuous countdown came to an abrupt end. This seemed to prove that Artoria had died under Gohan's sword. But what made Gohan afraid was that Artoria, who had been pale due to her heavy injuries, gradually regained her color. The black sludge that kept flowing out of her wounds also stopped, and the wounds on her body gradually faded and healed. This was not the appearance of Artoria being stabbed by Gohan. It was more like she had eaten a rejuvenation pill from Gohan. Long time no see. Artoria Black suddenly opened her eyes and said something that surprised Gohan. It had been a long time. This feeling was like an old friend that he had not seen for many years. Long time no see, Artoria. Although Gohan did not know what had happened, this did not prevent Gohan from giving the correct answer. In any case, he would just go along with what she said. Is this how you treat an old friend? Artoria looked at her naked upper body, then at the Gojian sword of the King of You in her chest. She smiled a little resentfully. This is the 4th time you've taken off my clothes. Why do you do this every time we meet? This should be the 2nd time. If we look at it in chronological order, this should be the 1st time. I will only take off your clothes for the 2nd time after a few hundred years. Gohan silently complained in his heart. Although Artoria's words were inexplicable and did not make sense, Gohan's intuition told him that Artoria was not lying. He seemed to have really taken off her clothes 4 times. Put away your sword. If you are not afraid of being contaminated by the filth in my body, you can always stay in my body. I don't mind. Put away your sword. If you are not afraid of being contaminated by the filth in my body, you can always stay in my body. I don't mind. Artoria's tone and the pair of oppies swaying merrily as she spoke made her look more and more like a disgruntled wife. Why did it feel like this character was about to collapse? Okay. What else could Gohan say? He could only pull his sword out of Artoria's body. At this time, Artoria had fully recovered her combat strength. Even 10,000 Gohans were no match for her. What are you going to do to the 2 of us? Gohan took a step back and stood in front of I Ching. Even with Gohan's intelligence, he did not know what to do in such a messy situation. He could only take 1 step at a time. What am I going to do to you? Artoria stretched out her hand and put on the black armor that Gohan had taken off her back. Consider yourself lucky to have met the Dark in me. If it was that little idiot White, I'm afraid she would have chopped you into ashes with a curry stick. Shouldn't the Dark Artoria be a little more ferocious? Shouldn't White be more righteous and kind? Was there really no problem with this setting? Wouldn't Artoria's character be ruined? Alright, don't mind the complaints above. It has nothing to do with the plot. Let's continue watching. Gohan, let me ask you. Have you been to Chongyang Mountain? Artoria, who had put on the armor again, looked valiant and heroic. There was also a hint of mystery and darkness in her aura. The feeling of a disgruntled wife had completely disappeared. Chongyang Mountain? Gohan remembered that Chongyang Mountain was located in the ancient Gansu province of Huaxia. It was too far away from Yanjing City and Yuzhong City. It was completely Yuan Ko's territory. Other than a few sword bearers, there would probably be no other humans there. Up until now, the furthest Gohan had been to was the Miling mountain range outside Yuzhong City. Other than that, he had never left Yuzhong City. Gohan had never been to a place like Chongyang Mountain, the hinterland of Yuan Ko. A mere sword-bearer like him would be seeking death if he went there. Looks like you haven't been there. Artoria Black shook her head helplessly. She stretched out her right hand, and the sword of the lake appeared in her hand. She pointed the blade at Gohan's heart. Gohan, since you stabbed me with your sword, I'll return the favor with a sword. As soon as Artoria Black finished speaking, Gohan had goosebumps all over his body. Without another word, he immediately lunged backward, hugged I Ching, and the 2 of them fell directly onto the sand. 1/10 of a second after Gohan lunged forward, a pitch-black sword aura shot out from the sword of the lake. It passed right through the spot where Gohan's heart had been. The sword aura finally hit the sand and exploded with a loud noise that sounded like hundreds of thunder. This sword aura is enough to break through my personal shield more than 10 times. Gohan, who was lying on the ground, made this judgment based on the sound of the sword aura explosion. Artoria was not joking with Gohan. She was serious. Gohan, the next sword aura will be fired in 20 seconds. You know what to do next, right? Artoria said cheerfully. Unfortunately, Gohan could not be happy. Although he did not know what Artoria was playing at, there was no doubt that it was time for him to escape. Gohan grabbed I Ching's wrist and ran. If he had known that he would have to escape in the end, Gohan would not have wanted to kill Artoria. What was she hiding? Gohan silently counted the time in his heart. When it was almost 20 seconds, Gohan grabbed I Ching and rolled sideways. Then the spot where Gohan had just been exploded. Artoria was very punctual. She said 20 seconds, and it was 20 seconds, not a second more, not a second less. Gohan ran madly with I Ching. Although he had successfully dodged 3 of Artoria's terrifying sword auras, each dodge consumed a lot of his stamina and concentration. After the 3rd dodge, Gohan was sweating profusely, as if he was about to collapse. I can dodge 2 more times at most. After that, my stamina will be completely exhausted. Gohan sensed the condition of his body and made a very bad judgment. He only had 2 more dodges left. In less than 40 seconds, how far could Gohan run? Where could he run to? This was a problem that Gohan had to solve. Otherwise, he would be killed by Artoria's sword auras and leave the dungeon in failure. If that happened, Gohan would have to quit the game for 3 days. Yaoguang would also be at a loss for the quest. I can't let this happen. Gohan began to look around frantically, looking for a chance to escape. At this time, a truck parked by the road attracted Gohan's attention. It was the military truck left behind by Yuan Ko. I Ching, you know how to drive a truck, right? Gohan asked as he ran to the truck. A little, but not proficient enough. Of course I Ching knew how to drive. Don't forget how she dealt with the German female commando team an hour ago. Okay, let's get in. Gohan jumped into the driver's seat and placed I Ching in the driver's seat. Listen, you'll drive later. When I tell you to turn, turn in that direction. Do you understand? Chapter 3:14. In the desolate desert, a military truck was speeding along at a speed that was almost the limit of its life. Every 20 seconds, the truck that was originally going straight would make a strange, sharp turn, and as the vehicle turned, there would be a huge explosion on the road it was originally moving on, just like a roadside bomb attack. The culprit of the explosion floated leisurely above the truck. After a few seconds, he casually threw out a stream of sword chi in the path that the truck had to pass through. Fortunately, Gohan and I Ching cooperated very well in the driver's seat. Every time the 20 seconds were about to end, Gohan would quickly give I Ching the command to turn, and then I Ching would make a dangerous turn the moment Gohan gave the command, avoiding the sword energy attack that fell from the sky. She's still above us, when can we get rid of her? Such a situation made I Ching anxious. This was her first day driving. Which rookie driver would want to drift in the desert like a professional racer? Don't ask me, I'm also a mess now. This is the first time in my life that I'm so lost. Turn left. Quick. As soon as Gohan's voice trailed off, there was a sharp turn accompanied by the crazy screech of the brakes. We must have a target. A target that we can hide from. Master Gohan, the brakes are no longer sensitive. If this goes on, the truck will collapse. Although I Ching did not know much about cars, the feeling of stepping on the brakes could not deceive her. At this time, the sensitivity of the brakes was far less than before. Previously, she only needed to step on the brakes slightly to complete the drift, but now she had to step on the brakes with great effort. No, we don't need a target, you just need to keep driving forward. This was the 3rd time Gohan repeated this sentence to I Ching. As early as when he got on the truck, Gohan understood that Artoria did not want to kill him at all. If Artoria wanted to kill him, she only needed to release 5 sword energies at the same time to seal all the escape routes and completely kill him. She did not need to use 1 sword energy to toy with him. But Gohan felt that instead of saying that Artoria wanted to toy with him, it was better to say that Artoria was deliberately driving him in a certain direction. She seemed to be driving him in a certain direction, just like a farmer driving duck. Wherever the whip was thrown, the ducks would flee in another direction. I Ching, let me ask you, is there any special place in this direction? Turn right, quick! Gohan, who understood this point, asked I Ching loudly. After a while of shaking and screeching brakes, I Ching replied while sweating profusely, "There's nothing special in the entire desert except for the oasis. If there's anything special, it's the Demon Temple. That's the only place." Demon Temple? Gohan seemed to have heard of this name before. Before the old chief of the Zongzi tribe died, he told I Ching that his mother was sucked into the Demon Temple. Where is the Demon Temple? Gohan already knew where he should escape to. Is that woman trying to drive us into the Demon Temple? I Ching was not stupid. She immediately understood what Gohan meant. She turned the truck and sped in the direction of the Demon Temple. This idiot, he finally knows where he should be going. I can finally end this boring game, Artoria, who was in the sky, said faintly when she saw the truck driving in the direction of the Demon Temple. As she said this, the sword of the lake in her hand disappeared. It seemed that Artoria had given up on using sword energies to drive Gohan away. I don't have much time left. That idiot is about to lose control. I should go too. Artoria's moving figure suddenly stopped in the air. If one paid attention to her armor, they would notice. The original black armor was gradually fading and turning blue. A few seconds later, Artoria suddenly disappeared into the sky, as if she had never been there. This is the Demon Temple? It looks identical to the Sphinx in the historical records. Standing in the middle of the desert, there was a building with a Sphinx lying on the ground that was especially eye-catching. This was the forbidden ground for all humans in the desert, the Sphinx. Every time a human tries to approach this place, the Sphinx will open its mouth and suck the approaching human into its mouth, just like my mother. According to I Ching, the mother that I Ching spoke of had been sucked into the Sphinx's mouth after she went crazy when she approached the Demon Temple. Hence, when Iyun talked about the temple, there was a hint of sadness in his words, as well as a hint of anticipation. What was she looking forward to? She was looking forward to seeing her mother again, even if it was a corpse. Let's go in. Gohan took a deep breath and ordered I Ching, drive in the direction of the temple. We have to prepare to enter the temple. No, we can't. The temple is too dangerous. I Ching immediately refused. No matter how dangerous it is, it can't be more dangerous than the universe-ranked Yuan Ko above us. Trust me, drive in. Since Artoria is trying so hard to get me to enter the temple, I will go in and see what's so mysterious inside. Yes, Lord Military Governor. I Ching did not speak further. She held the steering wheel tightly and sped straight in the direction of the Sphinx. Sure enough, when Gohan and I Ching were about 500 meters away from the Demon Temple, the Sphinx's mouth suddenly opened up and down. A suction force that was like a Category 12 tornado spewed out from its mouth, sucking the entire truck into its stomach. Then, the Sphinx shut its mouth tightly, as if nothing had happened just now. Climbing out of the wreckage of the truck, Gohan looked around and found himself in a hall. It was a hall the size of a basketball court. The ground, roof, and surrounding walls of the hall were all painted with various ancient Egyptian-style murals. In each of the 8 directions of the hall, there was a statue of a dog-headed man. These dog-headed men were holding a bloody head in their hands, and there was a lampwick as thick as a hemp rope standing on the top of the skull. The 8 wicks were all lit up, illuminating the surroundings in a hazy manner. It was just like the hazy lights on the roadside before the apocalypse, and the little foot massage shops were written on the signs. It was not known if these lampwicks were always lit, or if they were lit the moment Gohan entered the hall. While Gohan was looking around, I Ching also climbed out of the wreckage. Because she was sitting in the driver's seat, there were a lot of things made of steel. When she fell, some sharp things scratched I Ching's left calf, leaving a bloody wound that was 150 millimeters long. "You're hurt!" When Gohan saw this wound, he immediately took out his gold sore medicine from his dimensional pocket. Before he could hand it to I Ching, he heard I Ching cry out for his mother as he frantically pounced towards a skeleton in the corner of the wall not far from him. The skeleton that I Ching was hugging was not the only one in the hall. Gohan roughly estimated that there were more than 200 bones scattered everywhere in the hall. It seemed that all the unlucky guys who had been sucked into the demon temple over the past 100 years were here. Gohan walked to the side of I Ching, who was hugging the skeleton and crying softly. Gohan noticed that there was a very exquisite diamond necklace hanging on the neck of the skeleton. It was very unique. It was probably because of this necklace that I Ching recognized that this was her mother's skeleton. At this time, the best thing to do was not to comfort I Ching, nor to make her happy, but to shut his mouth and let I Ching pour out her sorrow alone. So, Gohan stood silently beside I Ching and watched her cry. In fact, I Ching did not cry for too long. How could the future Gyendi not be able to control and restrain his emotions? After a few minutes, I Ching wiped her tears and stood up. "Admiral, do you have any dry branches or other flammable things on you?" I Ching whispered, "I can't let my mother stay here forever. I want to cremate her and bring her back to the surface for burial." Hearing I Ching mention sparks, Gohan could not help but think of his parents and the ashes that had exploded. His heart was abnormally sad, and he could also understand the pain in I Ching's heart. "I don't have anything flammable on me." Gohan patted I Ching's back, "But we can use what we can." Gohan took out a fuel tank from the wreckage of the truck that had turned into scrap metal and poured the gasoline inside on the skeleton of I Ching's mother. Then, he used an iron rod that was dipped in gasoline to ignite a flame from the kobold's oil lamp and threw it on the skeleton. In an instant, the skeleton was set ablaze. The bright red light of the fire shone on I Ching's face, making her face look especially pale. After the skeleton turned into ashes, Gohan very considerately took out 3 kvass bottles from his dimensional pocket, twisted open the bottle cap, and directly poured the wine on the ground. "Damn, Gohan, what are you trying to do to my kvass?" Ition was anxious. Seeing that his treasure was being ruined just like that, he shouted through the sword mark with a heartache. "I don't have a choice. I have to find something to store the ashes in." Gohan replied, "Then can't you let me out and let me drink all this wine? That's too wasteful." Gohan ignored the heaven-leaning turtle's grumbling and handed all the empty wine bottles to I Ching. I Ching looked at Gohan gratefully before starting to collect the steaming hot ashes on the ground. Actually, he also collected quite a bit of pure dust into it. When the 3 wine bottles were almost full, I Ching suddenly picked up a shiny object from the remains of the ashes in surprise. "Admiral, why can't this be burned off? Mother loved this the most, I wanted to burn it for her too." Gohan fixed his eyes on it. It turned out that I Ching was holding the diamond on the diamond necklace. Logically speaking, it would be strange if a normal flame could burn a diamond into powder. A diamond that could be burned must be a fake. However, Gohan would not spoil the mood by telling the truth. "Instead," he calmly said, "this should be something your mother left for you. I hope you can continue to pass it on." There was a saying, "Which school is the best at picking up girls? Look for Gohan from Yuzhong University." Damn it, it doesn't rhyme. Chapter 315. System Prompt. Quest updated. Quest 5 has been completed. You have entered the Demon Temple of Anquan. System Prompt. Quest 6. Temple Exploration. Enter the deepest part of the temple and find the secret hidden there. When I Ching carefully hid the diamond in her pocket, the system prompt finally arrived. The system prompt should have arrived the moment she entered the temple, but it only appeared now. It gave Gohan a bad feeling, but Gohan couldn't figure out what exactly was wrong. When I Ching was cremating her mother, Gohan thought about many things. He thought about the hidden dungeon storyline, heaven shrouding Jiandi, who had suddenly turned into a woman, Artoria Black, who had walked out of the dimensional vortex, and most importantly, Artoria Black seemed to say that he was very familiar with her, to the point of being a resentful woman. It felt like Artoria Black was his companion. For example, the demon temple that Gohan was currently in. If he thought about it carefully, Artoria Black had purposely chased him here. Her goal was probably the secret hidden in the depths of the temple. Whatever, I don't care. Since I'm here, I'll take things as they come. Gohan had a feeling that as long as he knew the secret hidden in the depths of the temple, Gohan might be able to solve the dungeon's mystery. Lord Military Governor, what should we do next? I Ching asked Gohan after wiping away her tears. Naturally, we'll go in and find out what's inside the temple. Gohan narrowed his eyes. In the hall that Gohan was in, there were murals on all four sides. Only the southern side had a huge golden glazed door that was more than 10 meters tall. Upon closer inspection, the decorative paintings on the door were completely different from the rest of the walls. Almost all the walls were painted with images of gods high above and mortals kneeling before them. There were also grand stories of great gods leading the people to expel the terrifying demons. Only this door's painting was completely different. There was no actual content on this door, only hideous faces that looked like they were alive. These faces did not have any eyeballs, as if they had been dug out. Just looking at these paintings was more terrifying than any horror movie. If there were girls here, they would probably roll their eyes and collapse to the ground the moment they saw these faces. As long as we open this door, we can go deep into the temple. Even without Gohan saying it, anyone with a bit of intelligence could guess that the secret was behind this door. But this door looks like it weighs more than 10 tons. Can we push it open? I Ching asked doubtfully. Although she had been enhanced by Bai Tianjian's physique, she was only a few times stronger than an ordinary person. Her strength was not enough to open this huge door. Let's go take a look near the door. According to the routine, there must be a mechanism that can open the door near the door. Gohan knew very well that it was impossible for such a tall door to not be able to be opened. Otherwise, why would you build such a grand door? Otherwise, why would they show those grave robbers and adventure movies? No matter how powerful the door was, it would inevitably be opened by the protagonist. This was an unshakable truth since ancient times. Therefore, Gohan and I Ching walked near the door and began to explore the walls on the edge, trying to find a mechanism or clue that could open the door. Sure enough, after searching for 5 minutes, I Ching was the first to find something. She called Gohan to her side, pointed to a mural on the wall and said, "Sir Military Governor, look at this painting." Gohan fixed his eyes on it. It was a mural of a cat. A dark cat was sitting there, and the surrounding lines were drawn with golden lines. It looked very imposing. This cat was like a god. In fact, cats did have a godlike status in ancient Egypt. The Egyptians believed that it was the cat god who broke the night and brought light back to the world, so they were very devout to cats. If anyone accidentally killed a cat, they would be punished by the priests of the temple. If someone's cat died accidentally, the family must shave off their eyebrows to show their condolences. In short, the Egyptians worshipped cats very much. It was not strange for a cat to appear on a mural. Gohan was very curious about what I Ching found on this cat and why she called him over. Gohan took another careful look at the black cat. There didn't seem to be anything unusual about it. "Sir Gohan, please touch here," I Ching said, pointing to the cat's private parts. Could it be that I Ching had some special hobby and liked to have sex with animals? Of course, Gohan would not make such a stupid guess. He put his hand where I Ching was pointing. There's a piece missing here. Gohan raised his eyebrows. There was a small dent where Gohan's hand touched. The shape of the dent was very smooth, and it did not look like it had fallen off naturally. Moreover, the inside of the dent was deliberately painted black, so that people would not notice at first glance that it was missing a piece. This dent was deliberately set up when it was built. Gohan analyzed. This is probably the position of the mechanism. I Ching, let's quickly look around and see if there are any fragments with the same shape as this dent. At Gohan's command, the two of them split up and looked around for the groove-shaped fragment. This was a very painful task. The surrounding lights were dim, and there were a lot of human skeletons lying on the ground. Gohan had to throw these skeletons aside to see the ground clearly. If it was an ordinary person, it would probably take them 4 or 5 hours to find such a small fragment. But if it was a sword wielder like Gohan and I Ching, it would be much faster. Sword Maiden's physical strength had directly improved Gohan's eyesight. In addition, swordsmanship was about judging the opponent's movements through subtle changes in perception, so Gohan was very sensitive to subtle things. Near the center of the hall, Gohan glanced around and found that there was a fragment with a shape very similar to the previous dent. Gohan decisively picked up the fragment and touched it carefully. In his heart, he was even more certain. So Gohan immediately called I Ching back to the front of the door, and then solemnly inserted the fragment into the dent. Sure enough, there was no gap at all. The moment Gohan closed the fragment, the whole hall began to emit a mysterious murmur. What is this sound? Why have I never heard such a sound before? When I Ching heard this murmur, she began to feel uncomfortable all over her body, and goosebumps appeared all over her body. This is the sound of a cat. In Gohan's ears, the sound that gave I Ching goosebumps was just a normal cat's meow. This is the sound of a cat? I Ching shivered. This is the first time I've heard such a disgusting sound. Why do you think the sound of a cat's meow is disgusting? Gohan was stunned for a moment. Weren't cats very popular? There were a bunch of cat lovers in Yuzhong City who drooled at their master every day. Well, that was not the point at all. Bold human, how dare you say that the great cat goddess is disgusting? At this time, a sharp voice suddenly came out. Bold human, how dare you not kneel in front of the great cat goddess? Another voice came out. Gohan and I Ching looked in the direction of the sound and found that two strange creatures had appeared on both sides of the door. On the bodies of humans there was a cat's head. Are these orcs? When Gohan saw these two strange creatures, he immediately thought of the many orcs in Yuan-Ko, such as dogs, lions, leopards, snakes. In short, almost all the main animals could be found in the orcs, and there were naturally cats like Yuan-Ko. But Gohan remembered that the cats in the illustrated handbook had a pair of cat ears, a cat tail, a row of cat whiskers, fine fur on their bodies, and soft meat pads on their palms. However, their faces were truly human, and they were all very delicate beauties, completely different from these two monsters that had completely grown cat head. Humph, stupid human, we are not those useless cats. We are cat slaves under Master Botet, servants who serve Master Botet directly. Don't compare us to those cats, a cat slave said proudly. Gohan knew the name Botet. It was the cat goddess in the Egyptian pantheon, the ancestor of all cats. It was also one of the 3 Egyptian Yuan-Ko who conspired to use magic to turn Suzhou into a desert. In the end, when the magic was cast halfway, it was discovered by a fairy sword-tier sword wielder who passed by, and the two sides fought. There was no detailed record of the 3 Egyptian gods' deaths, but from the fact that they abandoned the desert where the magic was cast halfway and disappeared without a trace, it could be inferred that the 3 gods were either dead or seriously injured, and had hidden in the dimensional gap to recover. These 2 cat slaves who suddenly appeared claimed to be Bastet's servants, so this demon temple should be a relic left behind by the 3 Egyptian gods. These 2 cat slaves must also know the way to open the door. Tell me, how should we open this door? Guhan could not be bothered to ask. He directly pulled out the King of Ugojin's sword, pointed it at the 2 cat slaves' heads, and scolded them sternly. How dare you attack? Haha, someone actually dares to attack in Master Bastet's temple. Brother, let's not talk anymore. Let these 2 lowly humans taste the power of us cat slave brothers. Chapter 3:16. The cat slave brothers were really powerful. They actually lasted 5 seconds under Guhan's hands. As a mouse-level Yuan Ko, this was a great achievement. Normally, a mouse-level Yuan Ko would be killed by Guhan in less than a second. Yes, these 2 seemingly very powerful cat slave brothers were actually mouse-level Yuan Ko. Guhan did not notice and killed one with a sword without much strength. Therefore, the remaining cat slave was extremely precious. Guhan did not dare to use too much strength and could only hold back 99% of his strength to attack. Otherwise, the rest would also die in Guhan's hands. Tell me, how can I open this door? If you don't tell me, I'll kill you. It was a standard threatening line that could be used in any way. Hero, I really don't know, Hero. When the remaining cat slave saw that his brother had died with a flash of the sword, he was so scared that he curled up on the ground like a mouse. He begged with a crying cat face, Hero, I really don't know how to open this door. We are the most useless minions of Master Batet. 200 years ago, Master sent the 2 of us to the ruins of the human city to look for cat food. As a result, when we came back, all the doors of the entire Abai temple were closed. The 2 of us have been waiting in this hall for 200 years and have not found a way to open the door to enter the temple. After the cat slave swore to the heavens and told his story, Guhan roughly knew the situation of this demon temple. It turned out that the original name of this demon temple was Abai Temple. Please note that Abais is not the name of any deity. It is the name of the 3 Egyptian deities who built this temple, Anubis, Batet, and Isis. Don't you think it's very depressing? In short, these 3 Egyptian gods, Yuan Ko, built Abai Temple and used Abai Temple as their nest. They planned to control all the areas of South Huaxia and turn the whole of South Huaxia into a desert. Then, the 3 of them could become the gods of the gods. Unfortunately, they had only managed to turn this small area of Suzhou into a desert by magic before they engaged in a great battle with the sword wielder of the immortal sword Tyr. After that, they lost all information. This surviving cat slave was called Assam. He was one of the lowest cat slaves under the cat goddess Batet. He was the weakest of the minions. In any case, Assam and his brother were the ones to handle all the difficult and unrewarding tasks. Thus, one day, Assam's superior sent Assam to the ruins of the distant Changshu city to look for cat food. Ever since the cat goddess Batet had accidentally tasted this peerless delicacy, it was like taking drugs, and could no longer escape the control of the cat food. The ruins of Suzhou City, Jiaxing City, and Wuxi City near the desert were all rummaged through by Bastet's subordinates. Helplessly, Assam and his brothers went to the ruins of Changshu City to look for cat food. You ask why they didn't go to the bigger and closer Shanghai to Suzhou to look for cat food? What a joke! At that time, Shanghai had already become the territory of the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. How could she, a mere Batet, dare to provoke the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas? In the end, when Assam returned to the temple after much effort and a full 5 days, he found that there was only a huge battlefield left in the desert. Their incomparably powerful 3 universe-level Yuan Ko's forces had all perished, and even the divine powers of Batet, Anubis, and Isis had completely disappeared. Only the Abai Temple was still intact. But at this time, all the gates of Abai Temple had been completely sealed. These 2 little Rolo were the same as Guhan. They didn't have the ability to open the gates. They also didn't have the guts to wander outside, so they just guarded the gates like this, and this lasted for a whole 200 years. 200 years. After listening to Assam's narration, I Ching was the first to express his disbelief. There's no food here, how could you last for 200 years? We don't need to eat, Assam explained timidly. Our bodies are actually formed by the aggregation of souls. As long as there's divine power, we can maintain our existence. The Abai temple is a temple built by the three great gods. Every brick and tile inside has divine power, and we can absorb the divine power emitted by the temple to survive. Our existence is really too weak, and the divine power here is enough for us to maintain our lives for hundreds of thousands of years. Once we leave the temple, we will gradually die due to the exhaustion of divine power. That's why for 200 years, we never dared to leave here and have always been sleeping in the temple. No, it's still not right. Assam's explanation was flawless, but I Ching instinctively felt that something was wrong. She continued to ask, "What about this mechanism? Why did you come out when we opened the mechanism? You couldn't have been controlled by the mechanism, right?" "That's not the mechanism to open the door, it's the mechanism to close the door," Assam said faintly. "When we discovered that you were here, we originally didn't want to come out and meet you. But when you embedded that fragment, we had no choice but to come out to stop you. Because once that fragment is embedded for a period of time, the outermost door, which is the mouth of the Sphinx you came in from, will be closed forever, and the people inside will never be able to get out." "We can go back the way we came?" I Ching asked in surprise. "Of course you can go back the way you came. Who would be so bored as to design their home into a dead end that only people can enter and not leave? The outermost wall behind you is actually movable. As long as you push the wall open, you can see the stairs. You can go up the stairs and walk out of the Sphinx. It's not difficult at all." Assam's words made I Ching completely dumbfounded. If they could get out so easily, then why was she and Gohan so busy? "Wait, you just said that if the fragment is embedded for a period of time, it will be closed forever. How long is this period?" I Ching asked anxiously. "I don't know about that. You guys can try and see if you can remove that piece of debris again. If you can remove it, you can open the exit again. If you can't remove it, then it will be closed forever." After hearing Assam's words, I Ching immediately tried to remove the fragment again. However, when he touched it, he could no longer feel the edge of the fragment. It was as if the fragment did not exist at all, and the mural had always been a complete hole. I Ching did not know what to say. "Is this the only exit? If we can enter the temple, can we find the exit?" Gohan, on the other hand, was extremely calm. Even if he knew that there was an exit, he would not leave. He had to find the secret of this shrine. "That's possible. There is another back door inside the temple that can leave." Assam nodded, then shook his head. "But this is impossible. The door to hell in front of us has already been closed. There is no way to open it again. Isn't the purpose of a door built to be opened?" Gohan laughed. "I don't believe that even if your three gods come, they can't open the door to hell." Assam explained, "Of course it's possible if the gods come. The lock inside the gates of hell can only be opened with the divine power of the gods. The divine power of the gods is like the key. Unless you can find the divine power of the gods, this is the only way. There is no other way to open the gates of hell." Trapped in such a completely enclosed hall, how could Gohan and I Ching find the divine power of the three gods? "Sir Military Governor, this Yuan Ko is cunning. He might be lying to us. There must be a second way to open the door here." I Ching did not believe it. She continued to use the previous method, and began to carefully observe the entire wall, trying to find a second suspicious place. However, after searching for a full 30 minutes and looking through all the murals, she still found nothing. I said, "It's useless. Other than the mechanism to close the outermost door, there is no other mechanism here. You won't be able to find it." Assam, who was obediently staying at the side, said, "Humph, Even if we can't find the mechanism, we can still destroy this so-called door to hell by force. I Ching snorted coldly. She pulled out her white iron sword and slashed at the door with all her strength. There was no reaction from the door, not even a spark. However, I Ching frantically retreated a dozen steps. Her face was pale, as if she had seen something terrifying. I Ching, how are you? Gohan asked with concern as he supported I Ching, who was in a somewhat sorry state. I'm fine. I Ching smiled bitterly. I just saw a lot of bad things just now. Bad things? Gohan was stunned for a moment. He picked up his Gojin sword and, like I Ching, used all his strength to slash at the door. Compared to I Ching, Gohan's strength was more than 10 times greater. The Hell's Gate, which had not been affected by I Ching's attack, now rippled like water. Then, Gohan retreated. The moment his Yu-King sword touched the door, Gohan seemed to see countless spirits and souls rushing into his brain, attempting to tear his soul apart. It's useless. This is a Hell's Gate that God Anubis created using 99,999 human souls. Unless the strength of your soul can surpass the combined strength of 99,999 human souls, you won't be able to destroy this Hell's Gate. Assam sighed. You have no idea how hard God Anubis worked in order to create a gate to hell that could never be broken. How diligent he was. When this gate was built, Lord Anubis lamented that even he himself did not have the ability to destroy this Hell's Gate. Don't waste your energy. The cultivation system of a swordsman focused on the cultivation of one's own sword essence. As for the soul, the swordsman would never actively cultivate it. Usually, as the swordswoman continued to improve, the swordsman's soul would also passively improve, but to reach the combined strength of 99,999 human souls, this was probably a level that could only be achieved by a celestial sword wielder. Give up. Give up. You won't be able to open this gate in your lifetime. Seeing I Ching and Gohan fail one after another, Assam immediately became very happy. What do we do? Are we really going to be trapped here? I Ching was already in despair. She could not think of a way to open this gate. Wait, let me think. Gohan closed his eyes. There was always a way out. He would definitely think of a way. The key was to remain calm. I have an idea. After calming down for a few minutes, Gohan suddenly opened his eyes and said something that made I Ching extremely happy. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.